hello everybody, and welcome to the Curious Realm coverage of the 2023 PSIfest here in Charlottesville, Virginia. I have with me right now Debra Lynne Katz. She is the president of IRVA, the International Remote Viewing Association. This conference is taking place in part with the Monroe Institute, the people who pioneered the world of binaural beats. Welcome to the show, Debra. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for allowing us to come and sponsor this year's event. I was so happy that we actively had sponsorship this year and we're able to come out and interview people and give you guys a little bit of attention to this amazing event that y'all put on every year.
Well, it was great having you last year, and I know we have a lot of fans of your show. So.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it's been a great relationship to have. I have thoroughly enjoyed everything I've done with IRVA. And having you on, you wrote the book, Freeing the Genie Within. Let's talk a little bit about that and how you came into the world of remote viewing and IRVA.
Sure. Let's see, where should we start? Well, so I have been involved in intuitive development and intuitive practices for about 28 years or so. And so I had already had interest in really anything having to do with intuition, ESP, things like that. But I really got very interested in remote viewing when I started to do I read a few remote viewing books and started to do informal experiments with my students, and they were having incredible results. And so I knew I had to find out everything I possibly could about the topic. And I discovered IRVA and got involved maybe about 10 years ago or so, and been here ever since.
And now, not many people realize, but there's a world of remote viewing out there. There's not just one practice of remote viewing. There's intuitive remote viewing, there's protocol remote viewing, all kinds of things. When it comes to IRVA and their involvement with remote viewing, which side of the cube do they fall on more? Is there a side of the cube that they tend to go toward?
Well, it really starts with how are we using the word remote viewing? So remote viewing, IRVA is dedicated to the practice of remote viewing, and not every intuitive practice would be considered remote viewing.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone tends to kind of use these terms differently.
It's a catch-all almost.
The catch-all part is hotly debated within the remote viewing community, and because they don't really want remote viewing to be that term to be used to catch-all.
Yeah.
Mediumship is not remote viewing. If we're going to be technical about the language. Now, I'm someone who tends to be flexible, so I look at it as remote viewing a specific definition, which some people say it is. It's comes from a very particular historical context.
Yeah.
It involves within that umbrella term, remote viewing, there's different kinds of remote viewing. So there's more structured remote viewing, which would be controlled remote viewing, or more freestyle remote viewing, extended remote viewing. But there's still some factors, such as it's done in a careful way, using blinding protocols, using structure, reporting in a careful manner. So that tends to be overall what remote viewing is. So you wouldn't call, like most mediumship practices, you wouldn't say that those are remote viewing. And some people say, like even simple clairvoyance, I'm just going to close my eyes and get an impression of something. Some people say that shouldn't be called remote viewing. If you just say, I can't find my keys, let me get an impression of them.
Yeah.
They say even that shouldn't be called remote viewing. Now, me personally, I do call it that, like, I just remote viewed where my keys are. So using it as a verb. But some people will argue with me about that too. So,
did you go through the chart? Did you go through the steps to find your keys? Did you follow the protocols?
Yeah. Or some people will say, well, you already knew they were your keys. You know, you already knew the subject matter you were looking for, and so, you know, that they may say that's just clairvoyance. But you know what? I would say, I sometimes do say I remote viewed my keys.
Sure. Well, and that's an important distinction to bring up, though, because honestly, it's interesting. Lyn Buchanan says all the time that, you know, you can teach anybody to remote view, but you can't teach everybody to be psychic. We all have that propensity to be psychic, but whether or not you're attuned to be able to flex that muscle is different than controlled remote viewing. Controlled remote viewing is, once again, a very specific protocol and a way that things are done. Like you're saying, the fact that you know the object would be why most people would say, well, you didn't remote view it, because, well, remote viewing, you're given something blind. You don't know what it is,
right,
typically.
So we're still being psychic in both cases,
yes,
but just we're talking purely semantics here.
Yes.
But then you said controlled remote viewing, and controlled remote viewing is different from remote view. You know, it's a method within overall remote viewing, but controlled remote viewing is very specific.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, just like any methodology, and
well,
you know, if someone's teaching one way of doing things, and someone calls it something else.
That's just it. When people say that, you know, remote viewing has been proven in lab work, that's what they're talking about, is the controlled remote viewing. The fact that we can statistically show that this is an actual thing.
Actually, no.
No? Okay.
Remote viewing overall, with what you said, that would be true of remote viewing, but controlled remote viewing is a methodology that the remote viewer is following step by step. So it's like it has 6 stages. You do one thing in each stage before you move on to the next stage. There's very particular terminology within that's different than in other parts of remote viewing. So really, controlled remote viewing that term should only be used to describe what a remote viewer is doing if they've been trained in that. You know, as opposed to, say, extended remote viewing, you know, which isn't using those steps, but is within the overall umbrella of remote viewing. So they're all being done like in a careful, more scientific manner than other ways of doing psychic practices, but controlled remote viewing is a very specific method.
Yeah, and once again, statistically, utterly shown in labs. It's been once again the project Stargate. Our government spent millions of dollars researching this literal technology, and once again, the idea that yes, there are natural psychics, you know, Ingo Swans, people like that who have a natural propensity, but there's also that protocol that, like Lyn says, you can teach anybody that controlled form of remote viewing.
Right. And then some people may still more artfully carry it out than others. And Ingo Swan was the developer of controlled remote viewing. So even though he was showing natural talents, he developed himself as well. He initially did not know always how to do what he did. He worked with different researchers. His training was really in the lab with different researchers. And at that time, the researchers didn't necessarily know how to help him, but they just found that if they ran him through different experiments, they discovered learning curves with him. Like Janet Mitchell, who recently passed away, she had worked with him in a lab even before the governmental project started. And she noted learning curves with him. So like with every different kind of target, like if it was a photograph or it was an object, it would he might not do so well like the first couple attempts, and then he would start to do better and better. And by the end of the week, like he was having really great results. And so they were both like, wow, this is interesting, because everyone has been thinking this is just a gift you have or not. But, you know,
it can be honed.
Practice.
Yeah.
Exactly. It could be honed. with some feedback. That's why they found feedback is really important, because I was surprised about this. Like prior to that, they would have like psychic subjects, tune into an object or a picture or something, and they just wouldn't like tell them, what they were looking at. They'd just be like, okay, time to go on to the next trial. And they found you really need to let the person know what was the target. You have to evaluate what worked, what didn't work.
Yeah, a decompression session kind of.
Yeah, and then you learn from that. And so this is really something you can learn. And in addition to Freeing the Genie Within book, most of my other books are on intuitive development and how can you learn those practices. So not just with remote viewing, but I'm also very interested in mediumship and in clairvoyance.
Well, I mean, especially right now, in the last year, having quantum entanglement win the Nobel Peace Prize. That has been the one that I've been heralding since it came out, because that utterly ties into all of this. It ties into mediumship. The fact that two particles, despite distance, can still influence each other. It goes right along with that 9th grade science concept of we're all 90% empty space. I'm sharing an electron show with my brother in Texas right now. The idea that we in and of ourselves are an instrument. There was a study done not too long ago that basically came out and said that the human brain is a transducer. That's what it's made to do. We regularly pick things up. The question is whether or not you've learned to really pay attention to that little kite string that's attached to your belly button, where when you walk in a room, it's kind of like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here.
Exactly.
And you may need to listen to that. Because, we all have those intuitive things that happen to us. And if we learn to tune into that, you'd be really surprised how easy a lot of the hard things in life get. The hard decisions, things like that. They can really be pretty cut and dry once you start to pay attention to that and learn it.
Yeah, and that's exactly where it gets into manifesting, working with the law of attraction. And you put it out there what you want in life. But then are you letting yourself go for that? And your body has a built-in intuitive system, whether it's in the brain, the gut, like your whole body is a sensing system.
Yeah.
And so your brain has said, I want to find a good place to eat for lunch and in this new town. And your body, if you just let it freely go where it wants to, it's going to land in the right place, or even meet up with the right person who invites you out somewhere. But you have to allow for that. And so many people, they have their brain stopping their body, right? Like, I can't go over there. I've never been there before.
It's like the logic center takes over.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're cutting off that intuitive signal that's designed to bring you to what you want.
Well, even to take that one step further, Deborah, the fact is we live 80% of our life in an auto-hypnotic state. We autonomically breathe. Once you know how to walk, you don't think about it. Your body just does it.
Exactly.
And our brain wants those patterns. It wants the freedom to not have to worry about a decision. And if you free it from that, it's amazing what comes out. I've told people for years that one of the things I do to go to sleep is wire cabinets. I build racks of gear and I wire them.
Oh, wow.
That's my counting sheep. But at the same time, one of the only remnants of my actual dream work that I have is occasionally I will build something in a dream. Like just the other day, all of a week ago, I saw a box in a dream. Like a tiny little computer capture box. And I woke up and I was like, all right. And I ordered the project box and I went back to sleep. And when it arrived, I built the box that day. I had all the parts. I had everything. All I was missing was the box.
And what was it for?
It's a portable capture machine for recording and things like that, for events, all that kind of stuff. So I don't have to bring a laptop and an interface. It's all built into one box. I put it down, push the power button, turns on, turn it off, go away. Everything's captured. They sell them for multiple thousands of dollars. I had a tiny computer and a monitor, and I just cobbled it together. But the fact is, I saw that box in my dream.
Wow.
I pulled that out of a dream and actually made it a real thing. And you can do that. It's possible. Part of my dream work used to be going to sleep with intent, going to sleep with the intent of finding the answer to a question.
And the thing is, when you actually follow through on that dream, like it's the follow through,
Yes.
right? And that's sending positive reinforcement to yourself to keep having that happen. What happens for people who don't do that, like, oh, I had a dream about this box and then I just, forgot about
whatever, a box.
Then it's like your subconscious just after a while just starts to feel defeated. Like, what's the use? You're not listening to me.
Yeah.
And the system starts to almost kind of shut down or have a disconnect. The nice thing is for people who have had that happen, it's pretty easy to reverse that. It's just, to make the commitment. And then when you have the opportunity to listen to yourself, you got to act on it.
Well, and I think that might be one of the big hurdles, especially with remote viewing for the common person, is because much like manifestation or prayer, I think people get very discouraged when, like, they pray for something and then what they prayed for doesn't happen. And it's like, well, did you look at all the possibilities around it? Were you even supposed to get that? Or were you supposed to be presented the opportunity and it not be there, so you realize you weren't supposed to have it? Things like that. And I think a lot of people, when they first initially start remote viewing, come up against that barrier of, well, I didn't get this right, I didn't get that right, this isn't the thing. Instead of kind of continuing that karate of, you're going to learn wax on, wax off before you ever punch a bag.
Right. And, sometimes I always say, is the person, what are they really going for? Because let's say there's a job and you think you'd really like it and you don't get it. But like, why did you want that job? Ultimately what you wanted from that job, I believe you will achieve if you stay at it. Maybe that place wasn't going to be the right place for you. Maybe you weren't ready for it. Maybe you needed to work for 5 more years, develop yourself, and then you're ready for it. And a lot of people, I also feel like a lot of times it's just a matter of, it's not that it hasn't happened yet. And people are so impatient. Well, in this society, we have this idea that as soon as we want something, it should be there. And simple things can be there right away. Sometimes really amazing things, but some things you have to be ready for, and you have to be ready for the change and want to deal with what's going to come with it. You want to have a successful business. Well, are you ready for all
the work that goes behind a successful business? There is that be careful what you wish for aspect, because it may just come true. And are you prepared for that? Because that may incur some work on the back end. I think we have definitely created an impatient society. As this came about, remote viewing, things like that, we were right on the cusp of a change in society. Things started that rapidity and that rapid process that we're in now. And to see this art evolve with that, not only as an art, but scientifically evolve with it, is absolutely awesome and phenomenal. It's great to see that the research has continued, that the research continues. What is IRVA looking at for the next couple of years? How are they looking to carry this research forward into the next generation, Debra?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of people operating now, more so than ever before, as what we'd call citizen scientists. And so really it's, so many of us feel that the field of research, remote viewing research, won't advance if it really doesn't explore what the intuitive or remote viewer, who the practitioner, what are they doing on the inside of themselves? What are they doing in their minds? What are they experiencing? How are they, when they have results, how are they getting those results? And so much research up to date, like it seems almost insane that this is the case, but so much research has always looked at the outside of the person, measuring reducing their work down to simple statistics. That's a constant problem in parapsychology. And so I do feel like IRVA just put out a study looking at how do remote viewers know when they're correct or when they're on target.
Yeah.
And it's really just a survey asking them, can you even tell when you're correct, and what's the indicator of that? And so I think there's going to be a lot of research that can build on even that answer. But, traditionally, the idea that you would trust someone who's having an experience or reporting their, impressions, and that would be important to even look at, or, that you're going to trust what they say. Now, if this is just about proving psi, proving the existence of this phenomenon, then you can't just rely on a person to say, yeah, I was psychic, okay. But we're already past that, so we really have to find out what are people experiencing. And the recent survey we did that I'll be talking about on Sunday, we're finding that, yes, I believe it was about 60% of our participants experienced remote viewers do know when they're on target, and so or do know when they have a correct piece of information. But it's interesting because they experience this in different ways. And so we're finding that there is like a broad array of differences between people. And that's why oftentimes there's controversies in on the social media forums, in different discussions. There sometimes
the camps can
really
be rough with each other.
Yeah,
the camps can be rough.
Yeah, and that's because different people experience their abilities in different ways.
Yeah,
and they practice. Some people want more structure. Some people, want more freestyle. But some people are feeling more. Some people are seeing more, and it really helps to understand these things.
Yeah.
So,
and it's interesting the synesthetic way in which remote viewing works. I was talking with Lyn Buchanan at breakfast, and like he was saying, he chooses a remote viewer depending on the task at hand from the client. So if the client wants to know what this thing should feel like, something like that, he will find somebody who has much more of a textural, and that's just it. You get impressions of texture, color, scent. It's literally from all over the brain, from all of the brain centers. It's really remarkable. And to know that, yes, if you dig into somebody's statistics, you can find out if they get more reliable hits on color than shape, if they get more reliable hits on texture than size.
And the reason we need that is because there's always going to be a certain amount of correct and incorrect data coming through. And when you're starting off, you do not want to care about, am I correct or not? You just want to tune into the target and be in the moment and not be worried about that. And so we've had criticism with our recent study from some people, saying you're going to get people too fixated on that. And as soon as they're worried about performance, then they're losing the connection with the target. And I totally believe that.
I could see that.
On the other hand, especially myself as a project manager, sometimes we're using multiple remote viewers, and we might have, say, 8 remote viewers, and 5 of them have information, saying like the missing wallet is over here in the forest, and 3 people might say, oh, it's over here in someone's drawer in their house. And so, what do we do with that? We have to have a way when the data isn't all matching. Of course, sometimes it's all matching, and it's like, that's exactly what we would love to have happen. But some people can be off. They're just going to be off for different reasons.
Sure.
And so how can we evaluate that data? We need to have some markers. So like you've said, Lyn has his database, and he will or may even select the viewer ahead of time, knowing what they're good at.
Yeah.
Because certain projects need people good at one thing over another. But an extra measure could be, asking the viewer, how confident are you about this piece of information? They're not going to be confident about everything. But myself as a remote viewer, the reason I even thought to to bring this to our research group, and then we decided this question was important, was because after so many years of practice, I started to notice myself that I would have moments where the information came in a certain way where I was so positive. I would almost bet my life on it. Like,
yeah, you
I
could
know
feel it.
This
you
is
could
going
feel
to
it.
match my feedback photo. This is whether I could feel it or it kept repeating. You know, that's the thing. What I do personally is I stay in a remote viewing session sometimes for longer than I need to. But what will happen is some data will come up on one page and then I'll kind of forget about it, and then suddenly it emerges again. I forget about it and then it emerges again. You know, so if I saw like water falling or moving 3 different times, you know, that's not going to be happening if there isn't water there. I can, you know, tell my project manager, you know, I am almost positive there is some kind of moving water there. Now, if I, you know, try to identify it as a river or a lake, I might be off on that. So, you know, can't say that for sure. But it is useful to know confidence levels, and not that they're going to always be right. But,
sure.
You know, so it's getting into... This is what I appreciate about like present remote viewers, whether it's at IRVA or just, you know, there's people who have worked so hard on this. And really we're now getting into the nitty gritty of how do we perfect this. Not that it'll ever be perfect, but, you know, so we don't have to keep going back to the beginning of, you know, is this stuff even real?
Yeah.
Which is important for people who are just coming into these topics or the community. You know, that is important to address. But if we always have to stay there at that basic level or questions, we'll never get anywhere.
If we have to preface every conversation.
And that's what's nice about it here. Like, we can go right into these at a conference like this. We can go right into these topics and talks, whether it's in the presentations or, you know, over lunch. And we don't have to go into like, oh, you know, like, do you think intuition is real? Or, you know, we don't have to go there.
This is probably next to MUFON, which is a lot of methodology. Like, the one thing that I love about them is the fact that like the whole first day is a 7-hour-long field investigator training.
I've
like
been to it.
You have no need to go the first day unless you're going as a field investigator. But it's one of the only conferences that I attend and sponsor where a lot of the talk is protocol. A lot of the talk is methodology and method of examining evidence, things like that, as opposed to a lot of Bigfoot conferences, other paranormal conferences that I go to. And I find that is the side conversation here as well, amongst tables and just people chatting just right here is, how do you go about telling that it's a hint or an idea, a hit or a hint? You know, and that verification, that cross-verification between people of methods of how they're doing it. And it's really great to see that community build itself and really have, once again, like you said, that feedback from other people, which is hugely important.
Yeah, and, you know, over the years, like skeptics, which have been there since the beginning of time, they you know, like to say, well, there's a lack of critical thinking by anybody that believes in these things. But one of the reasons why I love doing surveys of whether it's remote viewers or psychics or mediums is what a lot of people don't understand is how educated and professional the people who are involved in these topics, especially when it gets to the people coming to conferences. You know, in every survey, I list out their professions. We have surgeons, nurses with PhDs. We have usually a lot of different kinds of engineers and accountants and architects.
There's a smooth almost 60% of speakers here with letters and commas behind their name.
Not just the speakers, people attending the conferences, people doing remote viewing, and, you know, not that you have to have, you know, any kind of qualifications, but, you know, it just speaks to that this is not just people running around who aren't thinking about what they're doing. You know, even people who don't do formal research or understand it, I'd say anyone that does a remote viewing session and then really, you know, carefully analyzes, you know, what did I get right? What did I not get right? But also, is it possible that, did I talk to anyone who might have revealed the target to me? Or, it's just like going through, did I do this in a careful manner?
Yeah.
And so, people are already like being self-scientists, the people that are involved in this work here. And, that's where there's all these different levels of science, I would say. And, you asked what our vision is for the future, and it is to also like bring more people that are remote viewers, but maybe not formally trained scientists, and get them more involved in research as well. And I've seen a change even in as we've been having different meetings and, just explaining to people, because if remote viewers are already operating in a semi-scientific manner, then if you can just train them a little bit, like, okay, if you do a session, if you're going to make a future prediction, email your prediction to somebody so you have evidence, just like how to take steps. So if you would then want to later report on your work, you can say to someone, it wasn't just, I did this and then said I did this.
Finding an outside person to archive for you, kind of, to be like, hey, hold this. I'll come back for it.
Yeah.
I'll come back to see if that's the valid information.
Yeah. And I always recommend that, if you have a dream and you think it could even possibly be precognitive, even if you're not sure, email it to yourself, email it to someone, write down every single detail, because, it's almost like if you don't write it down, it doesn't count. Just go over the top recording, even if you don't think every detail is going to matter or be relevant, because so many times, whether it's with a dream or it's with something in remote viewing, there's things you might leave out, and those are usually the things that turn out to be the most important. So, documenting and, how do you document and how do you do it in a professional way, and, covering your bases like that. And so, that's what we're all about, is helping people amp up their game and helping viewers so that they could be employable, because how many people in this world are looking for things, need help with their, business decisions, need to know what's going to be happening, in the future, that there is so much potential.
It's interesting to me the actual number of remote viewing consulting agencies that there are out there, and the number of consulting agencies that employ a remote viewer. There's quite a few. There's quite a few.
There's a lot, and there's that number is increasing.
Yep.
But it'll only continue to increase if the outside world, can see that they can work in a professional manner with.
That's right.
With these people, and so that's what we're here to help.
Well, unfortunately, and I've been saying this about a lot of topics. Fortunately, the conversation has been flung wide open in the last few months with whistleblower testimonies, things like that. To hear in the NASA panel on UFO UAPs, to hear NASA scientists say, we have been grossly negligent in our job as scientists. We've been calling this fringe, and unfortunately been kind of disgracing scientists that study the fringe, when the actual job of science is to study the fringe. It's to find out what that, but we know that there is a 3 to 5% unquantifiable anomaly. That's our job as scientists. Like, I don't know a chemistry professor that would let me pass with a 95% remainder of solution. Where'd the other 5% go?
Yeah.
You got to find that 5%. That's the job of science. And now, fortunately, yes, Stargate, right over there in the library, there are 4 3-finger-thick books that are in the entirety of the Stargate archives. Everything that our government spent millions of dollars researching in this. They don't spend millions of dollars researching something that they, A, can't use, and B, ain't real.
Right. And so to still have scientists, and there are still scientists out there saying like, oh, there's no research in this area. This research has been going
voluminous.
on.
Voluminous.
And, there are at least 4 journals dedicated to these topics. The Journal of Society for Psychical Research has been out. Well,
comes out once a year.
And, there are journals that have been coming out now for, over 100 years. And so people just haven't read the research. They haven't found it.
They haven't been exposed to it.
Right. So we have to do a better job of, getting it out there. But at this stage, I'll just say to people, I'm sorry you're not familiar with the research. It's there, so you cannot say it's not there.
Yeah.
And, hopefully that'll start to change.
Well, I think a lot of discussions on these topics in general are starting to change, Debra. The minds of scientists are truly starting to open when it comes to this stuff.
I hope that's true. Because, really, it does come down to just outright discrimination. It's like to call something fringe or pseudoscience or, it's just like calling anybody,
no, it is a ridiculous and ridiculing way to go about things.
And that anyone would think that would be okay to just dismiss an area of exploration you don't know about.
That's not exploration. Literally.
That's what's mind-boggling.
Yes.
Is that people could, still in this day and age want to reject it. But a lot of times...
Well, and I think that goes right back to the beginning of our conversation, manifestation, things like that. Unfortunately, and even with science, if it don't fit in that box of expectation, then it's not. And it's like, hey, just because your prayer wasn't answered in the way you wanted or expected doesn't mean it wasn't answered. Doesn't mean mean that the bell didn't ring. You just weren't looking for that sound as the bell.
Yeah. And it may still be working in you and through
absolutely.
You. It's just not shown up yet in the way you could recognize
it. Precisely. And having that open mind, having that open box, because once again, even at the last whistleblower hearing, the first words out of their mouth was, if you're tuning in for Little Green Men today, you've come to the wrong place. Because the conversation got wider, a whole lot wider. And when they said non-human intelligence, that leaves a whole panoply of things and leaves a whole range where you're not putting it in a box. And if it doesn't fit here, then it's not,
Exactly.
And when you're talking exploration, scientific exploration, you've got to have that open mind. To walk in with an expectation of result is literally what started this science. The fact that when scientists went home and were thinking about their experiment, that they were actively influencing their experiment. That is the research that started all of this. And now, once again, with non-locality and quantum entanglement, that is being proven.
Yes.
It's being proven that, yes, you can absolutely influence that by just thinking about it. You can change it. It's pretty remarkable. Debra, thank you so much for taking the time, especially here at the beginning of the conference. It's fantastic. It's great to see such a huge number of people here. The ballroom is completely full. It's been great.
We have 218 people signed up, and that's almost 100 more than we had last year.
No, it's incredible. It's an incredible growth.
And that's just in person. I think we have about 100 people online right now.
Wow.
So,
incredible. Well, Debra, let everybody know, of course, other than the Curious Realm store, where they can go to purchase Freeing the Genie Within and your other books, and how they can get involved with IRVA, how they can become an IRVA member, become a supporter like me, and how they can even learn remote viewing.
Well, they can check out my own website at debrakatz.com about my books, and they're also available on Amazon. And then for IRVA, just go to IRVA.org. And again, that's the International Remote Viewing Association. We'd love to have you check out the website, become an associate member at least. And, we have a lot going on online, our research meetings, our classes. We have a whole educational program. Mm-hmm. And so, check us out, IRVA.org.
Fantastic.
Thank you
Debra,
so much.
Thank you so much once again. While you are online, checking out everything from IRVA and Debra Katz, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find all of our content. That's where you can find all of our episodes. That is where you can find our library of books from all of our guests here on the show. Stay tuned through these commercial breaks. We will be right back with more coverage from PSIfest 2023 with the International Remote Viewing Association and the Monroe Institute. We'll be right back after this. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to our continuing coverage here at PSIfest 2023 with the International Remote Viewing Association and the Monroe Institute. We are so happy to be here as not only a sponsor, but a participant interviewing folks. While we were here, one of the vendors who is sharing some stuff is Yaw, and he is with Carbonic Truth. This is a pretty incredible thought form that you have. Let's start getting into this, because one of the things I've talked about frequently over the last year is the recent Nobel Prize for quantum entanglement. The idea that two particles, despite distance, can influence each other. I mean, a particle in the moon could be influencing me right now. So the idea that you have of literally the carbon that we exhale having our vibration in it is pretty fascinating. Tell us a little bit about how you came to this and what it's all about.
Well, yes, my name is Yaw, which means my name is a mirror reflecting the truth of who you are. And who you are is always the extent of what we can learn about others. So in that sentiment, this idea of carbonic truth is eliminating time-space and illuminating instead as a timeless finished. No need to finish anything, as a timeless finish. There's nothing after that. Timeless being, timeless. This is timeless, this is finished. Now, this idea of arriving to this timeless, finished, silence after is when carbon is redeemed. Because currently, carbon is a truth keeper, truth of information. Because as we exhale, the carbon is a platform where each of our cells have transformed oxygen into carbon. The function of each cell is to express, by resonance, its healing and its interrelatedness to the surrounding organs and other cells. Well, for that function to be on time and operating in that ceaselessness, we need to die and be rekindled. So carbon facilitates the information before death. In other words, whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not, each time you exhale, each time we exhale, we are dying to its fullest termination of oblivion. And carbon extracts that information through the algorithm generator of the heart, kindling you as information on carbon, inscribing you based on the resonance and communication occurring through this exchange and this electromagnetic field, orienting itself in a way that it can imprint on the carbon as a platform. By the way, carbon is a hexagon, and it's very unique in nature because its hexagon shape can dispense and receive energy at 6 temperament. Other atomic structures, they have, just like this house, dispenses energy of heat equally around its walls. Carbon is one of the unique features in the universe that allows 6 different temperament, both in receiving and in dispatching.
Yeah.
So a bank is as good as its trust with other people's money, so to speak. A carbon is as good as the illumination of your truth as a dying sequence, no longer beyond this, entering the void, inscribing in the fullest information relevant to universe, by the way. It's very personalityless, of course. So now, that is why we call that whether you know it or not, you're being kindled by the next palpitation of the electromagnetic field by your heart in the outside through the carbon, and the carbon that came from your inside, even though it was one atom of cell and one cell and one molecule to one molecule, now that it's out through its interconnectivity, it connects with all of your resonance of all your cells, as well as all your without, all the interplayness around you. So now you have one atom of carbon holding allness as information available for kindling. That's how your heart's next electromagnetic palpitation emanates a radius, and this radius is algorithmically designed to kindle the relevant information, and that's why carbon is a good dispenser, because it can release energy and release your emanated truth based on a next resolve. So it's algorithmically kindled in a way for your immediate full result from the karmic entanglement, if you're there to receive it. Unfortunately, we're not. We're too deep in the matrix. So what happens, we only are given our own truth to the extent we're able to receive it. So this interplay goes until one day, the capacity to shut the perception off in some ways, so that you can no longer perceive separation. And then carbon can be redeemed at that point, which means, it will end all karma in the sense of your proximity to it or your entanglement to it. Sorry if I went without a pause.
No, absolutely. Because once again, I like letting people go because, A, you get the full thought form without being interrupted. B, there is a lot to digest in that. And the concept, number one, of carbon holding information, fully founded. Like, I don't know of anything that we find that we don't try to give a carbon-14 test to find out what environment it was in. It tells us everything about the environment, diet, like all kinds of things. The age of it, the age of when it ceased to be. And that's pretty remarkable. And once again, to know that, to take that one step further and talk about living carbon in that way, and the fact that when we exhale carbon dioxide, that we are actually being reborn with each breath.
We are being reassembled by the photonic dance that occurs by the music of the heart. Music of the heart is reference to an algorithm machine that is here to be the passport agency between death and rekindling. It introduces you cellularly to the cosmos in your path of death 8 times a minute. And then the heart, as a generator of truth, electromagnetically gets the next pulsation, kindling your carbonic vibration or your carbonic truth as information. Carbon itself is just a platform. It doesn't do anything. It's the 4th element after the Big Bang, but it's the first element that is non-metallic. So it doesn't erode, it doesn't corrupt. I am metallic. I rust, I die. Carbon is a good trustee. It's not prone to that, right? So what happens now that the heart is in a dance between being and non-being, now that the heart has learned to be algorithmically kindling a death and reinterpreting a vibration, who comes to the rescue? Water. Water of the cornea of your eyes, they are inversive. Water is inversive, which means it's shapeless, but it holds inversely all shapes and all shapeables, because it's inversely has a memory of all. So the kindling of the heart's electromagnetic, with cooperation of the proteins and the enzymes in the inversive water of cornea, which is the communication to the physiologic, you will be rekindled back to life as perception perceives you. And the mind doesn't allow you to see death, so it will continue to feed you the perception of, hey, there's a life and there's a ticket. The next breath, let's watch to the cinema. Let's go to the cinema.
Yeah, and now when it comes to the idea of non-local consciousness, how this relates to remote viewing, things like that. How do our carbon atoms that we are exhaling and expelling interact with the rest of the world? How do we can we still interact with those?
You know, it's not a matter of interaction. It never is. It's a matter of wakefulness. It's a matter of waking to what is.
Mm.
And a remote viewer or a person interested in accessing information, so to speak, at any plateau, is well served to get acquainted to the fullness of the information that is carbonically through their own exhale available. Because remember, a remote viewer or a person actively connecting to a subject or connecting to information in its tactfulness, what is this person essentially accessing? Is accessing information. Where do you access this information? Is there an absolute information? Yes, it's through carbon. And is that person already vibrating the truth of that tactfulness of that information by simply having been hired, having been contacted, having been reviewing this through their talent and their perception, their intuition? Do they already have that vibration of tactfulness of that information? The answer is yes. So how do you access it? What is the best source of accessing it? The best source of accessing it, if there is one that is idealist, conceptless, philosophyless, without any religion or any kind of ideology, what would be? That might be the most kosher and immovable piece. What is that? It's so immovable that the neutrons of the atom have essentially are drunk in the bar. Mm. And if there's no neutron, if the neutron is cosmically drunk, then you're able to access your pre-actualization of that matter. If you access that, then all actualized matter is there.
Sure.
So therefore, you don't need, it's no matter about accessing, it's a matter of, where is the absolute information of all the days that have passed and all the days that have not yet come, and what is my interrelationship to that allness? It's on carbon. And again, this idea, hashtag immovable peace, because this immovable peace. Now, I also propose this, if I may. Can I say another thing?
Sure.
Without, so here's the thing. We are all aware of the one constant, speed of light.
Yep.
We build our own understanding of the universe we live in based on that foundation. In fact, that's the only foundation that we know from the beginning to this day hasn't changed, which is this idea that the speed of light is this, and whatever it is never going to change, okay? I'm here to tell you there's a second constant.
Which is?
Which makes this the constant that Einstein gave us actually the second, because I'm here to tell you that there is a constant more in front of our eyes, more available, more true. And the constant that is more available to us is the intensity, the intensity of a photon to return back to the immovable peace, to pre-existence of actualized matter, is constant. In other words, this speaker, as a light, as a photon that has traveled eons and eons and have come to evolve to what it is at this point, is able, no matter how much time the photon at this speed of its constant has traveled, it's able to go back to that immovable piece, to the location, so to speak, because it's not a removing, it's not a returning, it's a wakefulness. The intensity to awake to the fact that you are still in non-actualized matter is constant. That's right in front of us. When we access that, we don't lose our actualization of who we are. We just realize that we are the move, never the movement.
Yeah. Well, and if you look back to early science that we all learned in school, we probably recall the fact that we're all 90% empty space. to begin with. The idea that this table is actively real is kind of funny. It's really much more of an agreed upon illusion. And like Lyn Buchanan said at breakfast this morning, it's not only that it's an agreed upon illusion, but it's, do we need the table? And not just that, but does the table need us? And that's pretty wild when you start quantally thinking about that in that philosophic way, you know, because yes, we are all intertwined. And like you're saying, our carbon, when it exhales from us, is literally us. It is carrying our frequency. It's carrying everything, which makes us up at that moment. So to know that tomorrow the carbon that I expel will not be the same carbon at all, because it's not me. It is me. I'm just a different me now, because things have changed, things have moved forward. But the one thing that is constant is the fact that, like you're saying, my light of being here and being in this agreed upon illusion is faster than the speed of light. Exactly. And it's pretty remarkable to think about that, because yeah, it is all the speed of thought. That's quite literally what this whole conference is about the idea of non-local consciousness, the idea that we can exist in numerous places at the same time.
Yes.
And how did you come about this information? How was this information revealed to you? How did you come to this hypothesis?
I have been doing a lot of meditation, soul searching. There are obviously prerequisite path that the path itself lays out for you. I'm not here to say there is a path to follow. No, I'm here to say that the path will always lay itself in front of your feet if you're willing to walk, if you're a seeker to the higher sentiments and essence of who you are. So in that sense, I was blessed with a situation where I can only describe as a termination. It's beyond death. It's termination. This is a place where there is no more reincarnation. Okay, it is completely termination. And through that termination, a rebirth of some sort, with the same harmony of the termination procession, rekindled this atomic vehicle. I call this at this point a diamond biovehicle.
Yeah, right?
Because before I am tuned into my human frequency at this point, and any point of my noticing and wakefulness, I am aware to the fact that I am a vehicle, a biological vehicle, and I'm carrying carbon, because I'm transporting carbon and oxygen, I'm transforming them. And the heart is the music between the cosmos. The real dance is between oxygen and carbon. If you look back, even our evolutionary progress, it's always been between, as far as our essence of knowing who this essence is this dance. And the heart's the music, right? So when you reduce yourself to that, suddenly you embrace death. Suddenly death defines life. You know, so suddenly you become that. So in a sense, I can say through that experience, this rekindling brought me aware, because I was able to notice myself manifesting in the exterior of physical limitation. And I didn't want to adhere to ideas, philosophies. I had already studied them. So I became a seeker as to what allows me to manifest in the exterior. I was able to manifest on the actual air that traveled through my own lungs. So I've been inside of my own chest. The mansions and so forth I can describe with detail. I've manifested. So I'm like, how does this happen? And then I, through this seeking process, was able to essentially integrate the Akashic file that has already, through termination process, through core crossing over, had already bestowed. So And through that process, I came to recognize that actually the non-ideology, non-philosophy thing that I've been searching is very much it's a gas. It's primordial.
Yeah.
And the carbon suddenly illuminated, and now I am now a frequent carbon illumination traveler, so to speak, and the multiverse. So essentially, when you realize that, what's the difference between a diamond and a charcoal? The difference.
Time and pressure.
Exactly.
Time
right?
and pressure.
When you're in the
nothing else.
When you're in the matrix, but when you exit the matrix, when you deny the matrix, what would be the difference? Wakefulness.
Yeah.
So if you awake to the fact that the carbon dioxide is actually diamond dioxide, okay?
Sure.
And what does diamond do? Pure diamond doesn't steal heat. The light travels, let's 100%, everything, every other atom steals a measure of heat, a measure of light for its own resonance, its own spark,
That's
so
true.
to speak.
Yeah.
But pure carbon doesn't. Now imagine if every time you purely consider the carbonic diamond biovehicle that you are,
Yeah.
you then in a way denying the matrix, and in that denial some space opens, and that space always gets filled with consciousness, and that consciousness orients you to the truth, and that's how any constellation works.
Well, and I'm even the concept that this hypothesis is tied to your breath. Like I was saying earlier, so many things when it comes to meditation, connection, oneness. The big movement right now is people trying to find their zen, I guess. And yeah, it all comes down to breath. It all comes down to controlling your breath, being focused on your breath, and actively taking part in that process. One of the things that we've talked about a couple times on this show today is the idea that we go through most of our life in an auto-programmed state. Our body doesn't think. Like, our brain thinks about things, but it would much rather think about things than actively do something. So it autonomically breathes for you. We take advantage of that, but the problem is by not focusing on that, we're missing something of ourselves, and we are letting an intrinsic part of ourself go without consideration. And even the idea of being present in the moment and focusing on the now, that starts with noticing that you're breathing. Notice you're here. Notice you're now.
Yes, and I may invite your listeners to focus on aspect of a breathing in particular, which is the aspect that they own. The part of the breath that we truly own is the exhale. We have no idea if the next inhale actually comes. We also are usually completely in procession of some sort of a matrix we call life during the between the inhale and the exhale. So you're still missing out on the truth of who you are. So now what does it leave us with? It leaves you with the out breath. If you were to tell me you're about to vanish and you're never going to even be seen, you're going to vanish from this earth, you're going to die, give me your last possession. The only possession that I truly would have would be my last exhale, right? Now, I have to remember my exhale is CO2, which means 80%. I'm now breathing 99% saturated oxygen. I'm using 19%. I'm returning 81% oxygen along with 19% carbon that I transferred it and used it.
Yeah.
You're breathing my oxygen.
Yeah.
If I'm inflamming these oxygen because I'm stressed, I'm anxious about tomorrow, I'm poisoning your oxygen. It's not a matter of whether I believe your ideas or concepts. It's a matter of, our vibration gets imprinted on any,
I don't have an applause button. I wish I had an applause button right now. Because we talk about that on this show all the time. The fact that you are responsible for every vibration that you drag into a room. And once you're aware of that, it really changes your awareness to the world around you.
And may
your
I
place
scare your
within it.
listener? May
Oh,
I
God,
scare
please.
Because it's not only, it's more than that. It's the building material for your next reincarnation. So this oxygen, not only you're breathing, I'm breathing, and my heart algorithm can only kindle me to the bricks I exhaled for construction to reconstruct me. So if I'm inflamed through my carbon and
Your next incarnation will start inflamed.
immediately
Yeah.
in the next inhale
Yeah.
through this
you're-
inversive
Yeah,
canal.
you're starting off contaminated. Wow. Wow. And that's an amazing and beautiful concept to once again know that you are reborn with every breath, that you have a new chance. I mean, it even says right here, like a redemption tool is one of the last points. And it's
Yeah.
the fact of we carry so much with us. And willingly so.
Yeah.
Willingly so, Yaw.
Yeah.
We choose this, and that's a concept that I bring up all the time, is the fact that at any point you can revoke your consent from that system. You can choose whether or not to give that negative energy to something. It costs you more energy to give negative energy than it does to actively not care.
Your listeners are lucky today, I tell you. Your listeners are lucky
Because
today.
90% of it, folks, much like your body going on without you, like Yaw says, we have control of that exhale. Try controlling the inhale and see how long your body lets you do that. Eventually, it's going to gasp and go, no, dude, you're awake, breathe.
Exactly.
It's going to make you do that.
Yes, because you're a resolver of karma that the cosmos needs to untangle itself from. So, cosmos needs you with your authentic nature as much as you need the next inhale.
That's right.
So it's an interplay.
It is.
And if I may go back to one of the points you
Please.
made, you referenced that you're reborn, but I wanna properly go back and say it's more like a reincarnation.
Sure.
Because because you connect to the state of existence where you had never even born yet.
And you're bringing information in with you as
You're
well.
awakening to the information that is already you.
Yeah, precisely. And that is remarkable thinking and really, really beautiful, and a great way to give people that mindfulness. That I think that's what is missing a lot. We have a very harried society, We didn't used to be that way. All of 100 years ago, we were not that way. 50 years ago, we were not that way. It's hard for us. Our brains learn more from negative reinforcement than positive reinforcement. We'll learn faster that fire burns you than you will to build a fire to keep warm and make food. So it's hard for us not to dwell on the negative.
Yes, but you know what? I wanna invite your listeners to beyond all of that. Beyond polarity, because at this point, what I'm here to tell you, nothing compares to this immovable piece. Meaning what? Meaning the photon, who is in movement with its neutrons and electrons and protons all in a proper motion, searching for actualization, the path of crystallization, the path of complexification of atom is what has brought us here. And this complexification is being led by omega, so to speak, is one way to put it, meaning there's an omega force pulling this path of atom towards complexification. And through this complexification, I stand here, I sit here and talk to you, and I'm here to tell you that I've come as a photon, as a moving photon, emanating light and continuing to emanate and dispense energy and move away from my source. This is demonic. This is actually satanic in comparison to the intensity of returning to my immovable peace, where the neutron is actually enjoys a cosmic intoxication at the local bar of its wherever it is, without any more movement. So the new agenda for our consciousness, the new food, so to speak, that our inner consciousness wants to be served, is the food of immovable peace is, I go as far as saying on the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo tried to say that. He showed an image of man who is a photon, who never is sitting down, who's supposed to have a momentum of a constant movement, is positioned as an immovable being, as an immovable. So a human has uses active force to bring himself to this immovable, passive force. And that is where the creative force emanates out of yourself. The background of God supposedly creating Adam is a brain. And the brain background facilitates that the only creative force is within as well. So how to access that is put your active force towards your most passive state of existence, and suddenly you will see an impulsion of your multi-existence, your accessibility to multiverse through that liquid, immovable peace.
Wow.
Or that, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you for that. Wow.
It's a revolutionary form of thought. It's a revolutionary form of thinking. Not many people are willing to take the time in our modern society, sadly enough, to slow down, to unplug, to get away. It's hard. We, as vibrational beings to begin with, are swathed with vibration. It used to be all of 50, 60 years ago, we had one really big form of vibration. We had the sun like 100 years ago. That's it. Now we have everything from our phone to lights to electricity. Everything around us is humming and buzzing in some way. So to be able to find your own frequency, to be able to find your own calm amidst all that can be very, very hard, Yaw.
Yes,
it can be very hard.
It's very hard if you're trying to do it with the brain that you currently have, that we currently possess, and with the tools that we currently are using. Because the mind that uses time and space to get to an immovable peace is not equipped to ever experience immovable peace. The mind that will connect to the immovable peace is a mind that is no longer is denying time and space. Because the immovable peace is exactly where you are. Whatever you are, because you become completely a mirror, you become Yaw. You become, as I am Yaw, you become Yaw. And in that, your interrelatedness based on your to the surrounding, every particle, every atom, every wall, every gesture, every molecule is then suddenly casts its light on your canvas of emptiness. Suddenly you are projecting the truth of yourself as you are emanating outside and being experienced through that resonance outside of your physical limitation. And then suddenly you realize, oh, I'm an immovable peace. I don't need to go nowhere. I'm being moved by the isness. Look at me. Wow. And I'm dying every time I'm being moved. So I am moved. I'm no longer in movement. Previously, I was in movement. I was lifting my legs, stepping one, and I'm part of the matrix. And every time I'm actually adding to the matrix, I'm adding karma. But suddenly, the intensity of this photon returning to this immovable peace where I am the move becomes tangible. I'm not selling you a book, although I have a book published in Japan. It's a poetry book. You can go to journalinglove.com. So I'm not selling a philosophy. I'm not, telling you go read a book or go
come to my workshop or anything like that.
Just connect to your exhale. It's there.
And once again, an incredible truth to share, Yaw. I overheard you talking about it a while ago. I saw you at your booth, and I was like, I've got to learn more about this. And then we talked, and I was like, well, I've definitely got to have you on the show, because once again, it's an incredible form of thought. It's an incredible way of thinking to connect yourself to the world around you and to yourself and your future self all at the same time. Let everybody know where they can go to learn more about Carbonic Truth, where they can go to learn more about this and where they can go to get in touch with you, Yaw?
Thank you so much. This information, was released 2 months ago, so it's in the development. But certainly, we have a website. It's Carbon Certainty or ccertainty.com. Either way, carboncertainty.com or ccertainty.com. But also, you can follow hashtag Immovable Peace. You can also follow hashtag Diamond Biovehicle. You can claim to be those things. You can claim. These are, the reasons I developed like these. I should say the reason these hashtags were waiting for emanation through this particular entity is your viewers. Is that so? For that. With the intensity that has been bestowed, I invite all of you viewers to visit their immovable peace lake in this no man's land, and in fact, stay there for a while. See what emanates on the surface of that water, because if you go to that immovable lake, you will see on that liquid light of that particular lake, it reflects allness. It reflects all the stars that has ever passed, because the inversive water will keep the memory of it. All the depth of this water in the lake, the rocks, the things, every light that ever shone under it is there as liquid light, unactualized. This is your lake. The intensity of you wanting to go to that lake is bestowed. The energy for you to go that day, you don't need to stop at a gas station. Yeah. It's bestowed. It's like your phone that runs out of battery, but 911 works somehow. Why? Yeah. Because it's just programmed that way.
Yeah, it's programmed to always have that percentage to be able to use for that. And we are programmed in so many ways. Yeah. And once again, our layer of consent allows us to be programmed in horrible, horrible ways by the world around us. And unfortunately, those ways become normalized. Yeah. And that becomes the norm, and that becomes our expectation now. Yeah. And we can change that. We can change that. And with every exhale. With every exhale, we can change that.
And thank you, and thanks your I thank your viewers, because every time they try to manifest an immovable peace during the exhale, this is the only way you can hack the human frequency, because we are a radio. We're not that particular classic music called human existence or human frequency. We are the radio. How to upgrade yourself from that particular program on the radio to the radio itself?
Well, we are a receiver. You just have to learn to tune the receiver, because otherwise you're going to get a bunch of static.
You don't want that.
That's what it is. You got to learn that fine-tune knob that used to exist on a radio, where it's like, oh, there it is, and it got rid of all the static. So, thank you so much for coming on. It was more than a pleasure. Once again, look right there at our audience. Let them know where they can go to find out more about Carbonic Truth.
The first thing is to know the truth always illuminates in front of you. So without you going anywhere, you already know the truth is right in front of your eyes. Don't be the fish who's looking for the sea because you can't see the allness of what is in front of you. So number one, the truth is right in front of you. And if it happens to kindle you in a way that is carbonic, and you want to connect to this idea of we are gas before we are human frequency, then you can go to Carbon Certainty, you can go to ccertainty.com or hashtag Immovable Peace. You'll have more of these talks. So we're expanding this to every which way. If you are interested to collaborate with us, we are collaborating with sports people in golf. We're collaborating with app developers for softwares that is going to help these ideas. So we welcome collaborators as well.
Well, fantastic. Beautifully said, Yaw. Thank you so much for your time. Care, while you are online checking out everything about Carbonic Truth at ccertainty.com or carboncertainty.com, make sure to stop on by curiousrealm.com. That is our website. That's where you can find our store at curiousrealm.com/store. Do not forget about the Knowledge Vault there, where you can find all kinds of declassified government documents, archives, things like that. Stay tuned through this commercial break. When we come back, we will have more coverage from the expo floor here at PSIfest 2023 in Charlottesville, Virginia. We'll be right back after this. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to our continuing coverage of PSIfest 2023 here in Charlottesville, Virginia. with the International Remote Viewing Association and Monroe Institute. Our guest in this segment is Julia Ann Mossbridge. She is a researcher in the world of remote viewing and precognition. She is the founder of the Mossbridge Institute, co-founder of TILT, the Institute for Love and Time. Welcome to the show. I had a chance to see you speak last year and was fascinated by your research. I was very disappointed that I didn't get you on last year, but very happy I have you on this year. Tell us a little bit about how you came into the world of researching remote viewing, because it's an odd field for somebody to just start researching as a scientist. But one of the conversations we've been having is it's interesting to see more scientists starting to look at things like this, paranormal, UAP, and the tie between all of them. It's pretty remarkable. So
yeah. You know, when people ask me, how did you come to do the thing?
It can be tough. It can be tough.
It's tough because the assumption is that something in your past was pushing you towards the future. And I think about time differently. So my assumption is everything that's happening in the moment is both a push from the past, but it also results from a pull from the future. And so I can tell you like half the story.
Okay.
But I don't know about the other story.
Because you're still in the midst of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So in the past, I have two sort of things that are true about me that are usually considered opposing. And so the first thing is that I've had these experiences since I was a kid of predicting future events, both in dreams and in sort of waking experiences, or knowing experiences that are very detailed. So just knowing something that's very detailed and is, you know, again and again shown to be true. And so when I was a kid, I would get like a dream journal because I had this very scientific family, and I thought, well, I want to make sure I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
And so I got a dream journal. I would write down these experiences, and so I could check, did I misremember thing, right? And so that made me think, all right, you know, there's something going on here. And I had enough data by the time I was 12 or something to know that we don't think about time the way that time actually works. Because I knew, I mean, there was no question that was true. But I had a scientific mind always. And so I have these experiences, but I want to understand them. And I want to discover what's going on. There's this mismatch between how time works and how we perceive time, and I want to study that. So that's how I came to study, especially precognitive remote viewing, and specifically precognition in all its forms.
Yeah, precognition is interesting, and so is the world of remote viewing, because like Lyn Buchanan says, we can't teach somebody to be psychic, but we can teach them to remote view, even though everybody has psychic qualities.
For sure.
And the idea, even now, of non-local reality, things like that, and the idea that we're a constant. We never go away. Energy cannot come or go. It just changes form. Right. So the idea of us having been and going to be is there.
Yeah.
Why we ignore that, I don't know.
Oh, I've been doing a lot of work on that because when I try to talk to scientists about this, or I try to talk to lay people about it, or I try to talk to psychics about it, doesn't matter. There is this fear of, I think it's a fear of loss of identity. I think I've got it down to loss of identity. Like if who we are is our story about our history, and then someone comes along and says, actually, who we are is this thing that also includes this future that you don't know, and actually you may not even really control.
Yeah.
That's a little terrifying.
It can be, because it revokes some of our power to an extent. It feels that way. But in all actuality, it actually frees you from
in all actuality, you're no
lot.
longer. Yeah, you're just not as concerned about personal power.
Yeah. And your control of a situation, because you realize you can control your reaction.
Yeah.
That's about it. You can control your state in a situation. I can't control you. I
don't know. So let's talk about control.
Yes.
I don't know that you can control even your reaction, because if we think about all the factors that are going into that, like what did you have for breakfast? Did you have caffeine or not today? Yeah. Are you sleepy? What are your genetics like? Are you addicted to anything? That's going to change your reaction. Are you a woman who's going through menopause? That will change your reaction, I can tell you. And so,
Yeah.
like, these are things that you can't control, or maybe you can control what you have for breakfast, but you don't know if there was something in there.
Yeah.
Then there's in the moment when something happens, you're consciously aware of it after it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about what you have control over, the big question is, who are you?
Yeah.
If we're talking about your conscious mind, you have control over nothing. That's like a movie that happens after the thing happened, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we're talking about you as the greater you that includes all of your unconscious, your body, sort of your spiritual self, and maybe even like cosmic consciousness or whatever you want to call
Sure.
it, then sure, you got control because you are including all of this.
Yeah.
You're changing your definition of who you are.
Yes.
So when people it's so fascinating when people want that kind of power, like I want to control everything. It's like as soon as you realize the only way to get that kind of power is to identify with the whole universe.
To release.
Now you have no personal power, but you don't care because now you're this thing. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and the concept I discuss with people, it's when you learn your place as an atom within the molecule.
Yeah.
You know, and realize that, like, oh, wait a minute, I am an intrinsic part of a system and a necessary part of a system.
Yeah.
And everything I do affects that system.
Or even
my coming and going affects that
even
system.
Even an electron in the atom or a photon that's being exchanged.
Yeah, precisely. And when you look at these things scientifically, especially the way that we think, like you said, the way that we perceive time, we have a problem with putting things in a box, even with science.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's got to fit in this. And it's like, but it does it?
Yeah.
Because, we gave time its definition. We decided that it was 60 seconds to a minute, 60 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
Like,
it's very useful. It's not that it's not
great.
useful. It's totally helpful. I want to be able to meet someone on time for dinner.
Yeah.
Right? That's cool. We want to share the same. Time is a language that is shared throughout the entire world. It's the only language.
Yep.
The people all over are using seconds and minutes and hours. It's fantastic. So actually, come to think of it, I've been thinking lately that time is the universal language that if there were another species that were trying to contact us, they would speak to us in units of time, because that is true for everyone on Earth.
Yeah.
Right? So time is really valuable that way. And, to think that part of it is cut off to us just because our conscious brains are going in one direction is just uninsightful.
Well, that's a very good way to put it. Uninsightful, because there is a large quantitative part of our brain that is active that we are not aware of.
Most of it.
And it's shown by the fact that 80% of what we do is autonomic.
Right.
We don't think about it. We don't think about breathing.
Right.
We don't think about moving once we've learned to walk.
It's
something that we take advantage of.
Yeah.
The last guest that we had on was talking about how we are connected to the carbon that we exhale. And the idea that we change every time we exhale, but that's really the only part of our biology that we control.
Yeah.
Our body automatically, try to keep yourself from inhaling. Your body will tell you no.
Yeah.
It will eventually make you gasp for air.
Try to keep yourself from exhaling eventually. Yeah. I mean, again, this thing about what we control is it reminds me of the argument about, that's what makes humans special. Over the decades, there's been this sort of, that's what makes humans special, and that's what makes humans special.
Evolved.
It's knocked down.
Yeah.
Oh, we use tools, and other animals don't use tools. No. We use language. Other animals don't use language. No.
Every bit of it that makes us special.
It's all about, what can we do to stroke our egos? And it's like, maybe just
we have a unique genetic code. No, we're three parts away from an earthworm.
Yeah,
not really.
No.
No.
It's just like, maybe we just need to be less insecure.
Or maybe a little less haughty.
Yeah.
Because there's that means of control. We want control.
Yeah.
And that's part of the scientific endeavor, of course, is to understand things.
Maybe that's what makes us different from other animals. We are into control and we're arrogant.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Every other animal, they said it in the Matrix, every other animal in the world finds stasis in its environment.
Yeah.
Not you.
Yeah,
Not you. You come in, you destroy, everything. That's just what we tend to do.
Yeah.
And it's strange. Because,
Chris, can we turn down my
you bet.
my headphones?
Absolutely.
Okay, Phil. Oh, wonderful.
There you go. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
when we are, let me see how I can phrase this. When we are, I guess, searching for that control, especially whenever you're talking about something like controlled remote viewing.
Yeah.
There are many different styles of remote viewing, and some of them are much more protocol driven. Some of them are more intuitively driven. When it comes to quantifyingly studying that in a lab, which side have you done more work toward? Have you done more work toward the intuitive side, or more work toward the studied, measured side of, protocol remote viewing?
Yeah, so both.
Okay.
I'm one of those unusual people, I think, that I have a gift at analysis, and that's why I do the science stuff, but I also have this intuitive gift. And I really like using them together. So I like studying remote viewing, so I've done a couple papers. You can, where would you find my papers? I think I have a tinyurl.com/precogpapers 2023. I think you can download a bunch of papers there. Done a bunch of scientific work. What I've found is that on average, I haven't found anything new. That's not true. I've backed up what other people have found, which is that on average, people can do this at a rate above chance, and that there are some people who are gifted at it. So that's what I've found. The new thing is that unconditional love, or the experience of love without constraint, it's non-romantic. It's more close to like a cosmic love, universal love, divine love, agape. Yeah. That, when you're in that state, your capacity to access this information is increased for whatever reason. And I've shown that twice now. The second paper is under review. First paper's out there. And that is, to me, the best scientific work that I've done in that area, because that's a key insight that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
In terms of the application side, I run a team. I worked with John Vivanco for a while. We had a team that worked with atmospheric scientists to try to figure out address some issues with climate change. I really enjoy working with scientific innovation, cryptography.
Sure.
Because I'm a scientist, it's like might as well use my analytical and intuitive skills together.
Absolutely.
So now I have a team called Intuitive Forecasting. So it's called intuitiveforecasting.com. You can find it. And what we do is we largely do science and technology projects. We do some pro bono missing person cases or perpetrator cases. But generally we do all what I call operational precognitive remote viewing, OPRV. So this is a sort of it's not a method, it's more like a framework or a context for remote viewing. So everyone can use their own method.
Sure.
Whatever they want. But there's two things that make this the context. So OPRV, the two things are, one, everyone does their work before anyone knows what the tasking is. So you have a transcript that's done, and you set it aside. And it could be months or years before the tasking happens. So you just have a stack of untasked things. And then what you're doing is, in the future, something happens where someone calls us up and says, we're trying to crack this particular encryption or whatever. And so then you pull the done sessions and you use intention to associate in the present a particular tasking with what's going on in the past when the person did that session. And it's a clean way to get an unbiased set of sessions. Yeah. So that's one aspect of that makes it OPRV. The other aspect that makes it OPRV is we use unconditional love intentionally in each session. So in each session, we're going into it with unconditional love. We are
starting with like a mindfulness meditation or something
everyone
like that?
Starts. Some people start with rock and roll or cleaning their house.
Okay. No.
So you can start with whatever they want, but within the actual session, we're basically intentionally sending unconditional love to everyone involved, because the theory is things are going to go well with unconditional love. People aren't smart enough to figure out. No one is smart enough to figure out the right thing to do in any future situation.
Yeah.
Right. We know that. We should know that by now. And so, if we bring unconditional love into the mix, at least it mitigates some of the mess ups that could occur.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So that's what that is.
One of the things we talk about regularly on this show is the haze in which we live in society now. And yes, at one point, especially go back to my great-grandparents. I'm almost 50. So go back 50, 100 years. And we were a totally different society. We were connected together in a totally different way. It didn't matter what our political beliefs were. If you needed wood in the winter, I gave you a cord of wood if I had it.
Yeah.
If I needed food, you gave me some rabbit.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
we took care of each other in that agape way because we knew that we were connected in that way.
My neighborhood is like that. I sought out my neighborhood to be like that.
Awesome.
But it's unusual, and I think we need to get back to it. I just wrote a class on Insight Timer for detaching from social media because and reconnecting with your community because
That's a hard piece of Velcro to pull.
I know
hon. That's a hard
it's
one.
more addictive than cocaine. But no, it really
It is
more addictive than cocaine.
It is a dopamine hit every second.
Yeah.
And that was fully metriced out when they launched it.
Oh, well, yeah. No, I mean, I talked with some venture capitalists about a project once in Silicon Valley, and they said, "Oh, this is really cool. What's going to make it addictive?" And I said, "No. See, addiction's bad for people.
Yeah.
This is about wellness." And they're like, "Yeah, we're not interested."
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
If we can't addict them, we can't sell them.
Yeah.
We can't
it doesn't
sell
make
to
the
them.
bucks.
And it's interesting because one of the things we talk about regularly on the show, I did a lot of abnormal psychology study in college, things like that. And our brains are wired for negative feedback.
Oh, wired for all kinds of feedback.
They have been wired for millennia to pay attention to your surroundings, to live in a slight state of panic and awareness.
Yeah.
And
So
that
looking
can
for threats and
and
opportunities.
that can utterly be hijacked.
Oh, that is hijacked,
It is
exactly. That's what
hijacked
they're
all the
doing.
time.
Yep.
And that's just it. And I remember when I was 12 and I had to ride my bike to the library to read things about the Monroe Institute. I could pick up a device and sit there for 10 hours now
I know.
and read things.
I know.
It was at one point the
And
fact
here's a question for you.
What's that?
If you do that, if you do the 10-hour scroll thing down the rabbit hole, does it make you feel good? Right?
Research-wise, yes.
Well, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it stimulates your mind.
Productivity, thinking-wise, yes.
But in terms of like your whole body,
no,
it makes you feel like crap.
exhausted.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
It's draining. And then the next day you're like, I can't function.
Well, and it's quite literally because of the fact of our brains are wired to see at 30 frames per second. We're now feeding them that 4 times as fast in 120 hertz.
Yeah.
You know, so your brain goes into the zombification 4 times faster.
I'm trying to keep up.
It gets tired 4 times faster, which means now it can receive that negative input 4 times faster.
Yeah.
Which,
Well, and it's receiving other people's information and other people's thoughts. I'm really concerned about us. I call it the great cognition heist. I'm really concerned about technology basically doing our thinking for us.
Well, the issue I think that we have is the fact that our brains are a big sieve.
Yeah.
They're made to filter and sort information. That's great if you've got a decent amount of water coming. Now
like
there is a deluge
tsunami.
of information.
Yeah.
And like any colander that you put underwater, if there's enough water going, it will flow over the sides. The colander will not filter it.
Which actually, by the way, brings us back to remote viewing because one of the remote viewing as a sort of spiritual practice or as a personal development practice is the experience of being able to pick and choose. Like, what does it feel like internally when I take this piece of information?
Yeah.
You know, like getting into that state of where you're just really more aware of what your internal information processing is, which doesn't have to go at that rapid speed. Is it's very calming.
Well, and it, once again, like you said, very meditative. The way I love Lyn Buchanan's example of this is a martial art.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
It's being a psychic in a martial art.
Yeah.
This is a martial art. This is a way in which you train your brain to think in a certain way.
Yeah.
And in the way it naturally thinks. Like our brains will naturally associate things. It'll naturally we're transducers. We constantly pick up signals all the time.
And the big question, it seems to me, is now, great, so we can do this. We know we can do it. Scientifically clear that we can do it, at least to the people who read the literature. So what can we do with it? What good can we do in the world with it? Like, let's do some good.
Yeah.
Like, I get kind of irritated with the experience seeking and the, oh, well, I remote viewed this thing that you can't check out and that's not helpful or whatever. And it's like, oh, you know what? I don't care.
Thank you. Because I belong to a lot of communities with this show, Julia, and it's hard for me sometimes. I've lived the better half of my life behind a lens or an editing desk, editing audio or video. Don't bring me your anomaly, please. I'll probably break your heart pretty rapidly. But there has been this issue going on amongst paranormal communities, things like that, where, there's a group of people out there like remote viewing a supposed Bigfoot attack in 1965 and things like that. And it's like, okay, well, I guess technically there's a problem there when you're talking remote viewing, because now you're talking about, like, here's an incident that happened and here's how it happened. Go remote view it. Is that remote viewing?
Sure it is. But the question is, what's the goal? Like, so it's all about intention, right? Because I can imagine a scenario in which remote viewing that attack actually helps someone. Like if someone was the person who got attacked and they're traumatized and they actually need validation about what went on, that's a scenario in which it would be incredibly life-affirming to remote view that. And then there's a situation where people
that being the actual victim, being able to remote view that.
Or even people like hiring a team of skilled remote viewers saying, like, I need validation for this. Here's the date, you know.
But would you give them the date and the circumstance?
Oh, it doesn't. It depends on how you're doing remote viewing. You might give them. I give everyone nothing because it's all in the future.
Sure.
Right. So I would personally, if I were talking with that person who said I need validation, I would say great, and then I would just give my team like yet another tasking, pull out what they already did, and answer the question the next day. So it's like, that's fine too. I guess I want to say, there's a room for it all.
Sure.
But I just want to draw attention to this idea of intention.
Yes.
Like what matters is, what is the intention? If the intention is to like feel good because you have cool information, that just gets old fast.
Yeah.
I've been there, but it gets old fast. And then another intention is to feel grateful that you have this gift and want to use it to help the world. Now that intention doesn't get old ever.
Sure.
That feels really good. That kind of self-transcendent intention.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the one I'd like to raise as like, hey, in what way is the work you're doing, whether it's remote viewing, you're a medium, what you're a
intuitive
dreamer,
work,
whatever your work is, how is that working with an intention of love, and how are you avoiding the
negativity?
Well, not even avoiding the negativity, because sometimes things are negative, but like, how are you avoiding the human sort of behavior that we call sort of ego propping?
Yeah. No, absolutely. The self-aggrandizement, and pat on the back that you
can get sucked into that.
You can. So, and even the validation from other people.
Yeah, that could feel good. And that could also be really important at a certain time in your life. So none of it is like absolutely bad. It's just always checking in with your intention.
Yeah. And how is your work received by other people in the scientific community?
It depends on the work. Like most of them don't know about that I am a remote viewer, right?
That's epic. Yeah. I love that.
So I just talk about it in this third person thing,
At the third dinner?
After the wine.
Yeah.
I don't drink, but like they're all drunk.
Yeah.
But so my experience with the scientific community is largely that when I get to talking to them and when I present to them, two things happen. One is people can get upset. So one response is real upset, real anger. They're angry at me. Don't you know about the second law of thermodynamics? Yeah. Like turning red anger. And then I just sort of say, I do know about the second law of thermodynamics, but let's talk when you've calmed down.
Yeah.
Because your emotional state is not helping.
It's not receptive.
I just like to call it out, for what it is. And then the second response is they come up to me after a talk and they go, Julia, I need to meet with you privately. And I'm like, I know exactly what's coming. They had some experience they can't explain and they're scared that they're crazy. They don't want to tell the other people, but they'll tell me because I just talked about crazy stuff.
Sure.
And so many people at so many institutions have had those conversations with me.
Wow.
High-level scientists who are like, I'm scared. Then we ended up writing a paper about exceptional experiences of scientists and engineers.
Well, and the phenomenology of these things, especially now with the UAP whistleblower hearings, things like that, I think it has really, really changed the conversation in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well,
in a lot of ways.
I was on
a lot of topics.
I wanted the whistleblowers. I really think Ryan Graves is a great,
he's awesome.
He's just fantastic.
Yeah.
I wanted him to speak more about the phenomenology, and he did talk a little bit about the science, and I know that wasn't the goal. But I work with an organization called the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies, or for UAP Studies, SCU, you know them?
Yes, I'm very familiar.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got to have you on to talk about that.
Well, so they're neat folks, neat people, and they're being very responsible. And I'm talking with them about, can we talk more about the phenomenology piece?
Yeah.
Because there is still a belief, in that world that if you start talking about anything that isn't sort of nuts and bolts,
hard and concrete
science, then that is too woo-woo. But in fact, we have to admit that we have human experience. That is not material.
That is what I loved about the NASA panel. I don't know if you got to watch the NASA panel, but that was my favorite thing. That was one of the first things that they addressed was the fact of we have been woefully irresponsible as scientists. Our job is to study that 3 to 5% anomaly.
Right. That's how you make progress in science. Is you study the anomaly.
The example I've given on my show the whole time is I don't think I'd ever pay a contractor for 95% of a wall.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have ever gotten an A in chemistry for 95% of the solution.
Yeah.
Did the other 5% go to gas? Did it become residue? What happened to the other 5%?
It is only the crucial piece.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that tells us about our reality.
And they were literally like, as scientists, our job is to study the 3 to 5% phenomenon and figure out what it is.
Well, there's a new article that just came out about that from one of the scientists saying, this isn't very scientific. It feels like it's still in this old paradigm of we have to show that this isn't extraterrestrial. And it's like, no, actually, folks, we barely understand.
Drop the ET, man. Yeah. Drop it. Get rid of the little green man.
Yeah.
Please. It could be something from another dimension.
It could be us from the future.
It could be us from the future. And that's why I loved the NHI concept. The idea that just opened a panoply of
if it's us
concept.
from the future, it's still human intelligence.
It's still us. And it's still technically extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
Because it's from a different Earth.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, right.
Still extraterrestrial.
It's sort of like the past is extraterrestrial. I like that.
Still with it, because we get hung up on these things. Like UFO just means an object in the sky that's moving that you don't know what the heck it is.
It's not always in the sky. It could be under the water.
It could be.
Yeah.
But that's just it. We get caught up in this paradigm of, well, it's alien. No, it's just unidentified.
Well, we're not that smart. I mean, that's why. I mean,
God, I love you.
No, I mean, like humans, we
get hung up.
We don't handle uncertainty well.
We don't.
We just have this issue with uncertainty, and I get it, because in order to survive, you kind of want to know, is that like a lion that's going to attack me or not?
Like I said, our brains are wired in that survival instinct, and that is very easily hijacked with the news that we read, everything else. Like you were saying, that social media engine that's in front of our face, it can be hard to see a positive in your day.
Yeah.
It can be hard to have that agape love for your brother when all you're doing is reading what red versus blue is doing.
Right, and what's fascinating is this is on my social media detachment and course and connecting with your local community. When I was doing that course, I was like, oh my God, it is so real. Like I needed the course too. It is so real that when you actually look around you and you realize like you're always looking for threats and opportunities.
Yeah.
When you look around you, you put down your phone and you look around you, there's so many more opportunities than threats.
Than threats. Thank you.
But when you look at your phone, there's all of a sudden more threats than opportunities.
We're cortisol junkies, man.
It'll kill us. It's really, really bad.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
And trying to find a way out of that, trying to find a way that you see. One of the things I brought up regularly is I can't grasp the concept of saying you hate somebody that you've never met or shook hands with.
Right.
Maybe you don't agree with their point of view, their politics, what they do in life, whatever. But to use that 4-letter word hate,
I know,
with somebody that you've never mutually spent time with or shared space with, there's a psychology there that is.
But it makes sense because one time I was on a bus at a scientific conference being bussed from one place to another. And the bus driver was playing this talk show host that I totally disagreed with politically.
Oh.
And I'm not going to say whose name it was. But anyway, was playing that.
Alex Jones.
No, I'm not going to say whose name it was. I'm not going to even pretend that I heard that. So I had this thought, and I wanted tolerance, and I have a relationship with God. Not everyone does. That's fine, but I do. And I was praying, and I was saying, could I just I just want to get to the place where there aren't like I could send love to like the bus driver, but I can't send love
through the radio
to this radio person. And the response I got back was, really? So you can't send love to the ones who need it most? Ooh. I know.
Wow, you're cold as ice to yourself.
Yeah, well, it wasn't. I don't think it was myself, or maybe it was my higher self, maybe it was God. I don't know, but it was very clear. Like I was ruthless with myself. Like, so the people who need it most are the ones who you say you hate. Why do you hate them? Because you need love, they need love.
Yeah,
that's the equation.
Yeah,
so it's just a simple equation.
Absolutely.
As soon as you find yourself hating someone,
it is a 1-to-1. It's a 1-to-1.
They need love.
It is an utter reflection of self.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's a hard bond in your mind to break and to let loose of. I spent my first year in college as a seminary for the Catholic Church.
Oh, wow.
And many years after as assistant youth minister, working in ministry, and everybody has a different spiritual journey. And for a long time, it was hard for me as someone who felt as though they were called to look around at a bunch of people in church. Yeah. And then one day, much like you, where my higher self just kind of kicked me in the back of the neck and was like, hey, that's a little haughty. Like, we all experience things at a different level, at a different rate. Just because somebody doesn't have that direct connection doesn't mean that they don't have faith, doesn't mean that they are connected. Like,
who knows?
That is
they
us
could be
putting,
more connected than you, but you don't recognize it.
And it's us putting our paradigm upon somebody.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's what comes back to the unconditional love.
Exactly.
And I think the reason why, sort of my explanation for why unconditional love opens you up to information from the non-local world, or this world, non-locally. I guess non-local access to information. Sorry, I have to be precise with the language. It's okay. Anyway, I think the reason that unconditional love opens us up to that is because judgment is like a block.
Yep.
And
it's a brick in a wall.
Yeah. And without the unconditional love, you're automatically judgmental.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. You have these rules that I would love that person if they changed in this way.
Well, it's the fact of we're having the conversation on the way to the table.
Yeah.
We're in the car.
Yeah.
We're literally going over what we're going to say and what they say in return. Like, you haven't even hit the table yet, Jack.
Yeah.
Put it in third gear and coast.
Yeah. Actually,
and get to the table.
Yeah.
Get to the table. Wait till the conversation happens.
Yes, I have this mentor who once said to me.
And I'm not saying that you're not maybe being precognitive, folks.
No,
However, are you imposing that upon the situation? And even whenever you're looking at, all of this research with remote viewing started about the fact of we can impose our will upon a situation, whether we don't realize it. Yeah. Scientists going home and just going, did I do that right? Did I do it right? Did I get that number right? And because they're thinking about their experiment, they're actually affecting it in the lab miles away. So we can utterly.
It's kind of sad.
It is to an extent.
It's sad. It's sad.
But
it's sad when. What am I talking about? It's sad when the obsession is about control. I totally understand that. I've totally been there. Yeah. And I'm not saying I won't be there again. But I think less so, but I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, when the obsession is about control, you don't notice all the other things. And that can get you in big trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And with your work with Tilt, that concept of spreading love, that concept of helping people find that frequency of love, what can they do in their daily life? I know right now is the time of mindfulness. We've gone through many times of philosophy in our lifetimes, but right now we are in the world of mindfulness. It's interesting to see people coming back to this concept of slowing down, being present in the moment, being here and now.
Yeah.
Don't worry about later. Like literally there is nothing you can do about that. You can prepare yourself. That's it. So what can they do in their daily to help lift that agave and kind of stamp out the negativity?
Well, again,
aside from getting rid of social media, of course.
The negative, you've got to be careful with negativity because life is full of things that are positive and things that are negative.
Sure.
And no one's immune. I don't care how much money you have
That's
or how
right.
enlightened you are. Everyone has experiences that they would wish that they didn't have.
Sure.
The key difference is suffering.
Yeah.
So like there's pain. Like I break my leg, I would rather not have broken my leg. The key is, are you suffering?
Yeah.
And that's different from the pain, right? And so that relates to tilt. So the suffering is sort of this opinion that things should have been differently, should have gone differently. Guilt around if I had done something different, it would have been different. Shame around that, or pride that things I did went really well, and that's why things are great, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this attachment to your control that creates the suffering. And so what TILT is about, the Institute for Love and Time, just so that I can say the acronym, is about using unconditional love in the context of holistic time thinking.
Okay.
And so we call that structural love. And so people have talked about structural racism, structural hate. This is structural love. And it's this idea that we are actually living in this matrix of love. I'm not talking about romantic love.
No.
I'm not talking about love and a pizza. I'm talking about this kind of agape, this kind of divine love, or this cosmic universal love. We are living in this matrix of love. And what we can do is embrace it throughout time and get really conscious of that. And that solves this suffering problem. So if you break your leg and you're all attached to like, I should have done this or whatever, but you have a practice of connecting with yourself over time, past versions of yourself, future versions of yourself, and you connect over time in a space of unconditional love, then that is extremely healing. And actually we've shown that. So we created a technology. Do you know this?
No.
Oh, we created a technology.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, it's called Time Machine. It's you can just find it online at timemachine.love.
Okay.
And it takes you through.
I love it.
It's free.
That's epic.
It's free, and it's for everyone. And we tested it with 97 people over 26 days. About half of the group of people had been really traumatized as children, and about half were less traumatized. The reason I say that is because the people who came in the door who were very traumatized as children, their overall well-being was lower than people who hadn't been traumatized, self-reported.
Sure.
Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because that's what you would expect. People who've had rough childhoods tend to have overall lower self-esteem as adults. And not self-esteem, well, yes, also self-esteem, but overall well-being is what I meant to say. And then over the 26 days, they both groups improved, but they met up so that at the end of the 26 days, they were at the same level of overall well-being, which is really tough to do with this population.
Remarkable.
We are very excited about that result. And so I'll tell you what the technology does.
Yeah.
It's simple as could be. It's so simple. It's not addictive in any way. And so what it does is it asks you to open up your time machine, which is this really cool graphic that Amber Williams on our team made. You go in there and it asks you to record a message to your past or future self. You get a minute to record the message with your voice, shuts it down, and then the next day you get an email saying your time machine has a message for you. And 100% of the time, as far as we can tell, you have forgotten what your message was. Wow. So when you go to the time machine, you're like, oh, that's what I was thinking yesterday. And it's really cool, and you start connecting over time, and it challenges you to connect with yourself with love, to listen to your voice with love. So the first step is really listening to your voice with love and learning to connect with yourself over time with love. And then it moves into these has other features where you could do meditations and stuff like that. But that's the main one.
That is remarkable, because I can totally see how you can really begin to build some personal empathy that way. And because one of the examples I use on my show all the time is Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Yeah.
His speech, leaving presidency. I don't know how many times I have heard that, A, in my broadcast career, B, just in life. Don't trust the industrial military complex, things like that. Yes, those were there. But if you go back and you watch that whole speech, you can almost hear him starting to cry.
Oh, he was touched.
You can feel it. It's And just recently did that resonate with me in that way where it's like, wow, you can actually hear the fear in this man's voice. You can hear his emotive quality that he's scared for the future here if we don't call a halt to this.
And that's so important. So we tend to focus on the text words, and people keep asking me, when are you going to make a version where we can text ourselves? And I'm like, no, we're used to text being, it could be from a machine.
Yep.
But when you hear your own body,
I tell people that all the time. I would love to help my wife and I when we reconnected on Facebook.
Yeah.
Sorry. But granted, it was back in the days where you actually had to know each other from college.
Yeah. That's how you met.
That's how we met. It was like, oh yeah, I remember Amy. But she was having an issue. I've always been considered a confessor to people for some reason. People just come to me and
priestly nature.
They just bare their soul like strangers. It's weird.
That happens to me too. I totally get it.
And I'm down with it.
I'm on the bus and like someone's like, here we go.
My wife will be like, wow, that went deep in a line for a soda. It's like, but she called. We were messaging back and forth. And finally one day I was like, listen, I would love to help you out with this more. I can't do this.
Yeah.
I need to hear your voice.
Yes.
Unless I hear your voice,
that's exactly right.
I can't tell the tension. It's not the comma where you're putting it ain't giving me the tension of your life right now.
The voice is so key.
I need to hear your voice to understand your emotion, to lock in to how to help you.
Yes.
And that began our first phone call. But that was literally the conversation. If
it's
I can't,
the essence of the soul. You know, I had a voice teacher who told me, my only voice teacher is fantastic, Heather Arani. She says, you know, the voice is actually physically at the center of your body.
Yep.
Like all the way down.
Yeah.
And all the way up.
Yeah.
And so, of course, it's going to reflect all the things that are going on with you in the past, in the future, in the now. Well, it's so telling.
Well, yeah. And I mean, think about it, folks. How many times have you gotten an email and just gotten enraged, and then you get on the phone with somebody and wow, I totally put that on the whole situation. Yeah. Same thing with the text. So many things can be missed out on.
Yeah. We lose our compassion.
If you actually take a minute and a half out of your day and make a phone call, there won't be a miscommunication. Yeah. You'll understand the unction and urgency behind somebody's voice and understand if they're mad or maybe frustrated instead of mad. Yeah. They're two different things that are kind of associated, but one's anger, one isn't. One's anger, one's fear. They're two different things. And if somebody's frustrated and fearful, you can help them with that.
Yeah.
You can't help them with anger. Like you said, like, I'm sorry, you're angry. We need to have this conversation later.
Another time.
You built the wall before I got here, buddy.
Anger's a whole process. Yeah.
Let's start working on removing mortar, then we can talk. And it's interesting to see that relation and the idea that we need to hear ourselves from the past, like physically hear ourselves.
Oh, I mean,
and hear our worry with things.
We had this amazing program, Amber, the one I mentioned, who made the time machine visual. She had this idea of bringing it into she lives in Chicago, bringing it into Cook County Jail and working with the inmates with this thing.
Beautiful.
It was frigging awesome. And so she's talking to them and she's telling them about this idea of like you exist over time, and even though we just see the now, that still exists in the future. And they're like, really? And so they did their first recording. And they kind of, we had one account for all of them, and they kind of shared who talked. And it was really touching. I was able to witness them listening to the recording from the week before, and them going, that was me. I was there. I said that. Like really, like, look, I really exist because I exist in time.
Wow.
And it's so strengthening. And they got so much power out of the experience.
No, I was just about to say, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. Because, yes, it is so empowering to yourself to know that, yes, you can fix your problems.
Yeah.
Yes, you were worried about that yesterday, and now you
God
aren't.
Plus everything else.
Well, sure. Yeah. You plus extenuating circumstances, but it starts with you.
Yeah.
It starts with you and your consent into the system.
To say, I exist and I'm real. And I was here yesterday, which means, by the way, I'm going to be here tomorrow, and I'm going to have to start thinking about how I'm treating my future self.
That's right.
Which became the topic of conversation. Well, how are you going to treat your future self? And that's just it.
The whole idea of self-love. And don't get me wrong, help people. Help people, folks. Help people. But make sure your cup's full. If your cup's full, how can you give water to somebody if you've got a half-empty cup?
I mean, and so you may think you're helping people.
Yeah, and really what you're doing is making people projects. at that point.
And also, they end up having to help you.
Yeah,
without you
precisely,
realizing it,
precisely. And it's hard for us to keep a cup full in this day and age. It's hard for us.
This bucket's got a hole in it,
It's
as they say.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been so fantastic to have you on. I'm so glad that we got to connect and have this conversation today.
I loved, first of all, just the freewheeling conversation, but the tone of your questions and your experience with spirituality and your relationship with God and all these things. I know they're not shared by everyone, and that's okay, but it's also really easy to talk with you about it. So that's really nice.
Thank you. It's my life is lived in the depths of things. I want to explore and get curious.
And you do.
Because if
this realm.
The day we stop questioning is probably the day that we've joined the great beyond and the atomic universe, like that's what I've always said. You should be questioning till the day you die. You should be questioning something. I think we should be questioning
after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let everybody know where they can go to learn more about the Institute for Love and Time, where they can go to learn about the Mossbridge Institute, everything else.
Should I look at the camera? Hi,
right
everybody. There. So you see my profile this whole time? Mossbridgeinstitute.com, intuitiveforecasting.com, loveandtime.org. What else? The Premonition Code.com. That's my book. What else do I have? Oh, those are the biggies, I think.
Okay.
Oh, my Insight Timer channel. It has a ton of conversations, classes like my social media class. So just go to Insight Timer and search for Dr. Julia Mossbridge.
Awesome. Great.
Easy peasy.
Thank you so much for your time in this very, very busy PSIfest 2023.
It's a blast.
Absolutely. While you were online checking out all of the amazing work from Dr. Mossbridge, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is the website. That's where you can go. CuriousRealm.com/story is our experiencer page. If you're an experiencer of the paranormal, if you're a remote viewer that's had an experience, if you've had an experience with ETs or extraterrestrials, or if you're a whistleblower, stop on by, fill out our form. We will try to get you some answers from our experts. Stay tuned through this commercial break. We'll be right back with our final bit of coverage for day one of PSIfest 2023 here in Charlottesville, Virginia, with the International Remote Viewing Association and the Monroe Institute. We'll be right back after this, folks. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to our final bit of the first day of coverage of PSIfest 2023 here in Charlottesville, Virginia, with the International Remote Viewing Association and Monroe Institute. Our guest in this segment is the indomitable Lyn Buchanan. He was one of many and one of the progenitors of the government Stargate program. Welcome back to the program.
Yeah, not the progenitor. Actually, it had been in existence 10 years before I got there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, last time you were on the show, we were talking a little bit about some of your remote viewing courses, things like that.
Yeah.
We had a great conversation this morning at breakfast that I've referenced more than one time.
Oh, really?
Today.
Okay.
Specifically the fact of you can train anybody to remote view, but you can't train everybody to be psychic, even though everybody has psychic qualities too.
Well, that's it. Well, the thing is, as you train them to use what psychic ability they have, they're going to automatically increase in their psychic abilities. It's like any learning, you do make new synapses. But also, since they haven't been using it before, and now they're using it, they feel that you have made them psychic. And there are a lot of teachers out there that are trying to sell on that, get money.
Yeah.
And say, I will make you psychic.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Because you're already psychic.
You're already psychic, yeah. You've already got it.
Yeah, exactly. You just need to learn to flex the muscles. They may be atrophied, or you've just never flexed them before.
Like the old saying, if you've got it, learn to flaunt it.
Yeah. Well, precisely. And let's explore that for a minute, because the idea of non-localized consciousness, the idea of all of us being a subatomic engine to begin with, that makes us all interconnected already. So the idea of being able to transverse space to see something, doesn't seem like that far of a leap for the imagination at that point.
For the imagination, for the conscious mind, it's a great leap. Yeah.
And how do you, I guess, first steps, how do you start releasing somebody from the fear of that leap, Lyn?
Okay. Now, for a lot of the remote viewing and the psychic courses and all that, I'm not sure how they do it because I've never really been exposed to those.
Okay.
I was exposed from the very beginning to the Inga Swan method.
Okay.
And the Inga Swan method is more of a martial art than anything else.
In what way?
Well, in that it's physical.
Okay.
We start you off by saying, okay, here's a pen and paper. Give me the simplest graphic representation you can of water. People will go waves, you know. Okay, now then, the most simplest graphic representation you can of motion, and they go zoom like that. Okay, and then we practice that over and over. It's the equivalent of wax on, wipe off, wax on, wipe off.
Yeah.
And one day in the martial art, somebody comes around that swing without thinking about it. You wax on. Okay?
Yeah, it becomes a muscular memory.
It becomes a muscular memory. And so once you've given them these what's called ideogram drills,
Okay.
over and over and over and over. I think mine was 2 months before they would go on, but it became solid muscle memory. And one day they said, okay, we've got this envelope and there's a picture in it. What's it a picture of? And my hand went like this. And I said, I don't know what it's a picture of. He said, well, what did your muscle say? Well, it said there's some land and some water. They opened it up, and it was a beach. Simple as that. And by doing this, it's a lot of work. Okay, it takes tons of practice. And yet, your subconscious already has the ability to know what's in the envelope. It also has the ability to know what's going on in what's written on a sheet of paper that's in a safe in the Kremlin. It has that ability to know. The thing is, your conscious mind doesn't have a way to access the subconscious knowledge. And so if you develop that way of having your body tell you, that's stage 1, okay? You get into stage 2, and you say, okay, you say there's water and there's land. Describe the land. Haven't opened the envelope. I don't know what the land is like. Okay, well, rub your hand across the paper. What do you feel? It feels gritty. Write it down. Feels wet. Write it down. Okay? Now then, describe the water. I don't know what the water's like. Well, what impressions are you getting? It smells fishy.
Sure.
Yeah, salty taste.
And I think that
is physical.
Yeah, I was going to say that is one of the most fascinating parts of it is the synesthetic part of remote viewing.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily that an image just pops into your head, but
controlled remote viewing.
Yeah, precisely. Controlled and we should make that distinction because that is specifically the remote viewing that you practice.
That the military used all the time too.
Yeah. And that once again is the highly drilled form of remote viewing.
Absolutely.
Sure, you are using your intuition, things like that.
Right.
But it's not necessarily like mediumship or clairvoyance.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And this is the controlled remote viewing that was trained by the military and trained me. And the fact is that just like you can become a black belt in the martial art, you can become a black belt at controlled remote viewing.
Sure. And much like any black belt or any karate class, there are people in the class who will attain that rank
Absolutely.
and that belt slightly faster. They will learn katas a little bit faster, things
Yeah.
like that. Same thing with this, very much
Yeah.
so. You know, you may have 3 different students come in with literally the same education level.
That's
but
right. Yeah.
2 of them will excel. 1 of them may peter for a little while,
Yeah.
you know.
And the general rule about how fast you're going to get it is, do you wax on, wipe off? You know, you practice.
Yeah. I was going to say, how much work are you doing? Because much like, hey, you could wish and manifest all day long, but if you're not putting the work in to help that manifestation, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
You've
With
got to still do the work.
With CRV, you can sit back and intend all you want. If it didn't wind up on the paper, you didn't do anything.
Yeah. Where's the trail?
That's right.
And that, now, when you started in the program, how were you recruited into Stargate? Let's hear that story first for many of the listeners out there who may not be familiar with your
If you've seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats, okay? I didn't kill the goat. I killed the computers. But this incident happened over in Germany, and I got flaming angry at a person while I was giving a demonstration of a computer program I had written. And he had intentionally hacked it, messed it up. And here was 12 commanding generals from 12 different countries. And I was giving this presentation, and I hit the enter key, and it went blank. And they all started laughing at me. And I looked up, and here's this other sergeant who had wanted the job of writing the program. And he said, "Gotcha," and turned around and walked off. I got flaming angry, and when I did, the field station went down. The entire field station went down.
Wow.
And I've had this PK ability all my life that I've had to fight. Well, the information about that got back to General Stubblebine, who was head of the Intelligence and Security Command, and he had been looking for people to do this. And
had he heard stories about people who could do this?
Oh yeah, he was.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And he brought me back to D.C. Initially, he thought, well, put him in the remote viewing unit, but he wanted me to start a unit that would learn to destroy enemy computers.
Target.
Yeah.
Specifically
Yeah.
targeting.
With the end goal of not destroying them, but controlling the information in the enemy computers so that we could make their missiles drop into the sea.
Sure.
Or just mess up their computers and all that.
Yeah. Haywire communications,
Yeah.
what have you.
And Congress said, that sounds like mind control. Congress had been caught in the 60s doing mind control, and they said never again.
Oh, yeah.
And so they wouldn't fund it.
Wow.
So Bert, General Stubblebine,
So MK Ultra actually put the kibosh on things to begin with.
a lot of things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And because they got caught.
Oh, yeah, like pants down, red bottomed.
Oh,
they
yeah.
got caught.
Oh, yeah.
Hard.
And
Well,
so anyway.
I mean, it was a telltale thing whenever the CIA bought up all the LSD in the world.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
That should have been clue number one.
Yeah. Should have been something strange.
When you
going
buy
on
the
here.
whole world's supply of a chemical, maybe there's something there.
Yeah. So anyway, he took me out to the remote viewing unit, put me in there, and when I first went in, I really didn't know anything about the remote viewing unit, and so they read me on, which is where they give you a sheet of paper that tells what the unit really does instead of what they tell the public they do. Mm-hmm. And you read it and you sign it, and when you sign it, that says
Mum from this point.
"Mum from this point," or it's 10 years in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I signed it, and I thought, this is stupid. I'm on candid camera. This is a joke. But over the next few weeks, I saw the people doing it, and they were doing phenomenal work. And I took to it like a duck to water. I mean, this is the most fascinating job I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
And so over the next couple of years, I wound up being the trainer of the unit. And
Now, during this time, did anybody know the purview through which you were brought into the unit? And this the hopeful
I think
the hopeful end goal of you being there, the fact
director
that
did.
a weaponization of
yeah,
this.
the director did.
Okay. But
Yeah.
but none of your fellow remote viewers.
I don't think they were told about that, no.
How do you think they would have felt about that if they would have found out that they were trying to, I mean, I guess you're in the military. You
Well-
can't assume that they aren't weaponizing something.
Well, I think they would have not liked it because we had the edict that we were never to do active mental work. What's now called remote influencing.
Yes, exactly. And I was
we
just
were
about to
only
say.
do passive mental work,
That-
collect intelligence, and
so watch how they are influenced.
yeah.
So
And
that
if
so
they
that
had
maybe
known
even
that I was there, selected originally to do active mental work, I think they would have been very cautious about it.
I would tend to think so. I mean, most people who have the skill set
Yeah.
and come like you do with an innate skill set already, they are connected to things in a different way.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and there's a heart the size of Texas in
Oh, yeah.
most people that are intuitive.
Yeah,
And
it
yes,
really
they
is.
don't. It's kind of like I've never met anybody that uses
Yeah.
their mental ability to go out and hustle poker, things
yeah.
like that.
Well,
because,
you know, that's why. Yeah, I admit I killed the computers.
yeah.
I could.
You
never,
weren't trying to kill the computers, though.
No, I
you were
wasn't.
just angry.
Yeah, but I could never have brought myself to kill the goat.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and
Even for
and
Cabrita.
people say, "Oh, well, George Clooney played you in the movie." The movie character Lyn Cassidy was actually a compilation of things that happened over 20 years to all of the viewers.
Yeah,
And my part of it was killing the computers and other parts of it through the movie. So, yeah, he played me in the movie. But the other incidents, he played other people,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. And they, like you said, kind of enwrapped all that together in one person as
Well,
the
they
head
had
of the
to
unit.
wrap
But,
20
yeah.
years of stories into a
Yeah.
2-hour movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, you had to do that. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's hard not to conglomerate those things. And of course, that leads to a lot of, I guess, historic confusion for some
Oh, yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Most definitely. And especially, once again, knowing that you went into the program with the intent of them weaponizing some of this through you.
Well,
but also not.
weaponizing the PK.
Yeah, the PK.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the idea that they didn't want you to do remote influencing.
No, they didn't
is-
want the remote viewing unit
Yeah.
to do the remote influence.
Well, sure, yeah. Because they're two different tasks, of course.
Well, yeah, one is mind control.
Yeah.
The other
Now,
is
granted,
gaining information.
and I could
Yeah.
see exactly why the CIA would want their hands on this method, because not necessarily even in remote influencing status, but in the fact that you could remote view how somebody is influenceable. You could remote view somebody to see how they are prone to
we
things.
wouldn't do that.
What their habits are, what their addictions are, things
Yeah.
that would make them a good
we did
asset.
We did a lot of personality profiles, a lot of plans and intentions.
Yeah.
You know, get into plans and intentions
Once
of the
again,
next day of battle.
Those are the beginning steps of can we make this person an asset from the other side? Can we?
That was not our purvey.
No. But that's
Pass that
absolutely what's
information
being
to
set up.
somebody else, and what they did with it, we had no.
Precisely.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's a great way to be able to immediately tell if somebody is maybe coercible,
Yeah.
in some way, or maybe has a pressure point that you can lean on to move them politically.
Let me give you one example of
Please.
how we sort of almost crossed the line. I almost crossed the line, and almost dangerously so. There was this one facility, I won't tell what country it was in, and they had some kind of protection on this highly classified facility they had. They'd had remote viewers who just couldn't get into it. So came my turn, and I couldn't get into it either. But I found that there was the director, and so I thought, well, maybe I can get into his mind and get the information.
Sure.
I couldn't. And so I found out in that process that he had a young son that he was proud of, and was really disappointed in the fact that he couldn't tell his son what Daddy does. So I, at this point, shouldn't have done it, influenced him to get to daydreaming about what he would tell his son if he could. And he sat there in his office daydreaming, telling his son in his mind all about the facility. And I was at remote view. I was at Fort Meade taking notes. And so that crossed the line.
Yeah.
But we got the information.
And
Yeah.
is that the only time that you ever crossed the line, Lyn?
Well, of course.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that.
All right.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. But
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure under orders, things like that, you
Yeah.
did whatever you were tasked
You
to
do what you do. You do what you need to do to get the information, because it's going to save not only U.S. lives, but the lives of British soldiers, Russian soldiers.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you guys were finding POW camps, all kinds of things.
We saved as many Russian lives as we did U.S. lives.
Wow.
Simply by stopping battles.
Yeah. That is incredible. That's incredible. And to know that now, when you're viewing, Lyn, when you're in the middle of a session, of course we were talking about synesthesia, the idea that smells, colors, textures, things like what. That was part of our conversation this morning, was the fact that, whenever you're tasked by a client, that you have a database of people that, hey, this person senses color more vividly than this guy. Like, this guy sees things in black and white.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding the proper person in that way? And how do you go about identifying the fact that they are better at, let's say, feeling a texture than somebody else?
Yeah, Fred Atwater covered that this morning in his lecture. They said, first of all, do you have the clearance? If you didn't have the clearance, you never got into the unit.
Sure.
Do you have an acceptance of psychic phenomena? If you didn't believe in it, then they weren't going to spend a year convincing you, and they did with me, because General says take him.
Yeah. We saw this happen.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and so there were certain criteria: mental stability. In order to get into the unit, we had to go through some really rigorous stuff to mentally stable. They didn't want mentally unstable people in there, and also just the ability to understand things. If we task you with certain equipment, okay, can you understand enough what's going on to report it?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Sure.
And by that time, before General Stubblebine got got me brought into the unit. By that time, I was a Russian linguist specializing in Russian technology and advancement. And that was my job at the field station. And so as part of that, when I came into the remote viewing unit, it was with that knowledge and that ability to understand all of the technological stuff the Russians were doing, and of course other countries too.
Yeah, what their current capabilities were, what they were working toward,
and
things
so
like that.
In the selection process, they also looked for your abilities outside of any psychic functioning, you know.
Okay.
So it was a very strict, and a lot of people have since said, "How do I get into the unit?" You don't.
Yeah.
Don't call us.
Yeah.
We'll call you.
Yeah. We probably won't call you. It may just be a van that shows up.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, I've always said, you know, to remote viewers, if you do a session, you turn it in, and all of a sudden, these black vans come racing up to your house. They come crashing into your house and take all of your computers, all of your paperwork and all that, and cart it out into their black van and drive off down the street with everything you've ever done. You know what the proper response is? Damn, I'm good.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely. And, you know, when you're viewing, Lyn, what comes through more for you? Is it audio, smells, textures?
By this time now, I've been doing this for 35 years.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Okay.
In the very beginning, of course, it was colors and smells, and that was basically it. You know, the rest of the time, I just had to rely on the physical response.
Okay.
But yeah, first of all, my strength was colors and smells. Okay. And then as I practiced, you know, which I did 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Then the other things developed too. And this is the thing about controlled remote viewing, that it's not so much your psychic ability, it's your practice. You don't practice, you don't get good.
Yeah. And with that in mind, take us through a generalized remote viewing session.
Okay.
How do you start with the target? How does a client come to you with the target? Things like that.
The client comes to your director or to somebody else, not the viewer.
Sure.
And that person finds out, narrows down the questions that the client wants answered. They take that and put it into a format that can be, this is question 1, question 2, question 3. And they then look to see who can do the best job on each question. Okay? And that's in the database. We rely heavily on a database. And then you sanitize the question and you give it to a monitor. This is the ideal session, okay? You give it to a monitor, and let's say they want to know where something is in the world, okay? And so they say, over in such and such country, we've lost an atomic warhead and all this, okay? And so then the director gives to the monitor the question, the target is a location, describe the location. The monitor tells the viewer, either the target's a location, describe the location, or he may say, this is project 2704, question 3, what's the answer? That's it.
Oh.
And in fact, he may not even say that. He may say 2704-3, view it. the more information you can keep from a remote viewer, the better they're going to do.
Really?
Yeah, because their conscious mind isn't there saying, "Ooh, I know what the target is." You know?
Well, yeah. You don't have the presumption at that point. You don't have the pre-construct.
You work clean.
Of something. Yeah,
you work clean.
And that's just it. We were talking about that earlier today about the the idea of. I'm not saying you can't remote view into the past. I'm not saying you can't remote view Mars. Yeah. Absolutely. But to remote view a specific incident.
Yeah.
I find some of that troublesome with, at least with controlled remote viewing. In the world of controlled remote viewing, it's problematic.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you're revealing location. You're revealing something like the example I gave you was the Bigfoot case from 65 where people were attacked. You're giving a lot of information there that is narrative.
You make sure you never give that to the viewer.
Yeah.
You may give it to the project manager. You may...
Well, so that they can verify hit, non-hit, things like that.
You may at some time even give bits of that to the monitor so that he can tell whether the viewer's on target or not.
Yeah, so he can pull more information out of it.
Never give it to the viewer.
Well, yeah, because much like a hypnotist, there's a difference between coaxing a client to give you information and leading a hypno session and leading somebody to an answer. And you could very easily as a monitor lead somebody to an answer if you're not careful.
You've got to train the monitor. I think the monitor gets trained more highly than the viewer does now, because they have got to stay neutral. Even let's say I have a target and you get a really successful description of it. If I feel pleasure that you did a good job, the pheromones in the room are going to pollute your session.
Totally.
And so you have to train a monitor to where they cannot react.
Yeah, to where they have no emotive response.
That's right. Yeah.
Even if they are dead on 120% right, there can be no emotive response from the monitor. Yeah. Now, is it helpful or hurtful in a session if the monitor is a remote viewer?
Oh, the monitor needs to be a remote viewer.
Okay.
A trained remote viewer.
Okay.
Because they understand what's going on. They can look across the table and see your micro movements, see when you're physically responding and not writing something down. And then they can say, what was that you just got?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
it seemed like you just got a hit.
It wasn't anything. I don't care what it was. Write it down.
Yeah. For you, when you're in a session and when you're viewing, I don't know how much viewing you personally do anymore. I know most of your work is now in passing it on to the next generation of people, which is a topic we talk about regularly with MUFON.
Oh, yeah.
People like that, even the Bigfoot community. It's the fact of most of the people that generated and started this work, folks like you who came in even 10 years after the program started.
Well, I realize I don't have that many years left.
Where's the next crop? Where's the next instructors? And we have to be bringing them up. It's fantastic, and it's great to see this conference this year because last year there was a very distinct age range.
Old fogies.
This year we've got like 20-year-olds here.
I know.
It's beautiful.
It's great.
It's awesome because it lets you know that this research can carry on for another 30 years now. If you've got 20-year-olds interested, they ain't going to lose interest.
Right.
This isn't a topic that you lose interest in.
No, it's not.
It doesn't get boring.
Yeah. No, it doesn't.
It's not like reading Anne Rice.
Unless you give them boring targets.
Sure. But it's the fact of moving forward with it and the fact that it will still be an evolving science.
That's right.
Because it is a science. There's a science to this.
And it is evolving.
Yeah.
We have developments in the process of my group, we have been learning a lot by being contracted by space research people.
Yep.
By medical people.
Wow.
And police departments and R&D people. And so each one that contacts us to do work, we learn what they need as opposed to what everybody else needs. And we have to develop some new tool for that specialty.
Yeah.
And so more and more people are getting lawyers, doctors, everybody, and we have to expand our tools so that we can meet their needs. And once it got out of the military and into the civilian arena, it has been growing and developing.
Yeah, I could see numerous industries that would use it as a consultant source.
Yeah.
And would use it as a consultancy, absolutely.
Not only a consultancy, but I have non-disclosure agreements, so I can't go any further than this.
Yep.
Companies are interested in developing their own remote viewing team, just like the military had.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I've been instrumental in
No
doing
different
that
than
as well.
no different than developing a good algorithm team that can
Yeah.
do predictive algorithms.
Now, the thing is,
things like that.
their work is going to be specialized in
Yeah.
their way.
Yeah, precisely.
Toward their company.
Yeah. And even to say that you can take this and gear it towards something specifically
Sure.
and train those viewers in that specific way is
Yeah.
awesome.
It
That's
is.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, let's get into your system for a little bit for the last couple minutes here,
Maybe.
because we're getting ready to go. We're getting ready to go to dinner.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want you to give away a lot of proprietaries, but
No, I won't.
how does somebody begin the process of remote viewing? How do they step into the
You mean
world?
a viewer?
Lyn? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You get coordinates. 270804-3, describe it. And so the initial stage one is, I don't know what it is. Oh, what'd your hand do? Oh, well, there's water and something man-made, and there's some land. Okay. Stage two, describe the water. Now, once you do that, describe the land. And so that stage one not only tells you the basics of what's the target, but it organizes the session. So you're not like a psychic where it's just all over the place. Tell me about only the water. Tell me about only the land. Now, tell me about the man-made object. Okay? The man-made object is big and square and metallic. Okay? Tap on the metal. What kind of metal is it? And you can take each descriptor they give you and ask for more descriptors of that descriptor, and pretty soon you wind up with what's written on the side of the machine.
Wow. Wow.
And so by doing it that way, that stage one organizes the rest of the session so that you can just branch out on each descriptor you get and find out tons of information on each thing. It's red, okay? Oh, tell me why it's red. Oh, well, it's red. It's dangerous. Oh, how's it dangerous? Oh,
Yeah.
And by doing this, a remote viewer can sit there in session in an hour and draw the floor plans of a place where a hostage is being held so that you can go and rescue them without getting them killed.
Wow.
We've done that. Joe is often, one of Joe's first sessions was the M1 Abrams tank. And they were saying, okay, we've got this classified project, describe it. And they expected to get maybe it's a tank.
Yeah.
No, he drew the inside of it down to the straps for the seat, down to the dashboard, everything.
Wow.
And at that point, they said, "Send out the black vans."
Yeah. Yeah. We have a special chair for you, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
Come here. We have some questions.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could see how that could definitely make somebody in the ranks sweat bullets.
Oh, yeah.
When you're talking about a closed door SAP,
That was
special access program.
At the time, that was the highest classified thing in the U.S. military.
Yeah.
And he just,
Wow.
yeah.
Now, are there materials that block remote viewing? Are there things that you can't get through, Lyn?
The Ingus One technique. I would say no.
Okay.
In fact, one time there was this ship. They suspected drugs. Okay, and I was the monitor for this, and the viewer had described a ship, and I said, okay, board the ship. Tell me about it. Well, I can't board it, and I can't get to it. And just out of, just happened to occur to me, well, if you could, what would you find? Oh, well, if I could, I would find, and they described everything on the ship. We found the drugs. Over the period of years, we found that just about, I would say every means of protecting a target, we can get past it.
Wow. Wow.
And when it comes to protecting a person, we have found that if the person puts up a ball of white light to protect themselves and all that.
It's like a beacon?
No, not so much. What happens is their belief that they have that protection lowers their natural ability to protect, their tendency to naturally protect themselves, and it actually makes them an easier target to remote view using controlled remote viewing.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, it basically makes them like a beacon. Like, it makes them almost easier to find.
It makes them invisible. And,
man.
Yeah, and, invisible, we can see anything in them. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That is intense and wild, Lyn. What's the most remarkable thing that you have remote viewed before we let you go?
Oh, I would have to pick from hundreds
I don't
of
want
targets.
you to. I don't want you to talk about something that you're still read on to.
Oh no.
Anything like that.
The
But
two that mostly come to mind. One, Saddam Hussein had a thing that had a plan. If he had been successful at the plan, right now, you and I and everybody in this place would either be Muslim or dead. He would have succeeded, and he would have wiped out the United States, period. There's no way to stop him.
wow.
And just by accident in a session, I found the key component to his plan. We were able to stop the plan, and I think that was the most important session I'd ever done because it changed history.
Yeah.
For me, the most important personally was a practice session. I had been tasked with the plans and intentions of foreign leaders and Saddam Hussein repeatedly. The man was crazy.
Oh, he was
and
special.
And you get into somebody's mind like that, you have to be careful you don't bring it back with
I was
you.
just about to say, is it hard to get their mind out of your mind once you're in there?
There's a detoxification process. You can spend an hour in a session and spend 4 hours detoxing from it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'd been given all these miserable leaders and I went in and I said, look, this is wearing me down. I can't do this anymore. And the director said, do your damn job. You're a soldier. Do your job. Get out of my office. And so anyway, about a week later, it was a practice session. I didn't know that. Went over with a monitor, and he said, okay, this is a personality profile. That's where you don't get into their mind and find their plans and intentions. You just stand off and describe a person.
Yeah.
And so I started working, and I almost immediately said, "Oh, you gave me the wrong target. This is a good guy." And so he said, "Go ahead and do the session." I did the session, and by the end of it, I felt like I was just glowing. I had never met a more perfect, wonderful person in my life. And so the end of my session, my summary was, whatever evil you think this guy did, he didn't do it. And so the monitor ripped open the envelope. The director had taken a sheet of paper and written on it in handwriting rather than a typed thing, Jesus.
Wow.
And I know that I never met Jesus, okay?
Yeah. Sure.
I met Jesus. And it changed my life.
Wow.
Everything I'd ever learned in Sunday school that was wrong, I suddenly knew it was wrong. Everything that was right in Sunday school, I suddenly beyond knew it was right.
Wow.
And it changed my life.
Wow.
It really did.
That's beautiful.
And for me, that was the most important session. The most important session I think I ever did for the military unit was that one where I found that one piece of...
Yeah.
Yeah, but if it hadn't been for that session, we would not live in a free country now. I can guarantee it 100%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. The things that you must have seen and viewed over the many, many years, Lyn, I can only imagine. The conversations that we've personally had have been eye-opening to begin with.
Listen, the Chinese curse is, may you live in interesting times. I have lived in interesting times, and I loved it.
Yeah.
It's the most exciting, most interesting job anybody could ever have.
Yeah.
I
imagine. I imagine.
Yeah.
Lyn, before we let you go, look over here. Let everybody know where they can go to find your work, where they can go to get your amazing book, other than the Curious Realm store, and where they can go to find out about lessons and remote viewing classes, because you have a fantastic university, things like that online.
Oh, online, yeah. I teach classes online now, and that's at crviewer.com, crviewer.com. CRV plus viewer, but I just used one V.
Totally.
The thing we're establishing for development is called Remote View Ranch. I bought a ranch in the middle of nowhere. It's in a no-fly zone. It's basically surrounded on three sides by government land for dozens and dozens of miles. There's no development. On the other side, it's 5 miles from the nearest little oasis town. And the first thing you get when you get there to the land and get out of your car, the silence and the peace is so loud you can actually hear it.
Wow.
If you've never heard the sound of silence before, it's just astounding. And the peacefulness out there. And so I'm building a facility out there for the research and development and training, further training of remote viewing. But we've also got all kinds of other projects going for space development, medical developments, and so on. So
Wow.
We're doing it.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time once again. It's always a pleasure talking with you anytime we have you on the show, Lyn.
Thank you.
It's always great.
I enjoy this. You're a good host.
Thank you. I enjoy the conversation. It's all about how we grow together as a humanity, man. And if we're not,
It is.
if we're not talking, we're 10 steps behind.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
It all starts with words, man.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. While you are online checking out all of the amazing work of Lyn Buchanan, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is the website. That is where you can find all of our episodes. That's where you can find our store to be able to buy Lyn's books, all of our researchers' books. Stay tuned after this commercial break. We will be coming back with day 2 of our live coverage
Yeah.
from PSIfest 2023 here in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm lucky I remembered Charlottesville. Coming to you.
We'll have you remote view the place.
That's right. Yeah. We'll be right back after these commercial messages,
Okay.
folks.
Good.